The 24H Series reaches its second stop on its European calendar after a highly successful Mugello 12 hours last month. We now move to Belgium for 12 hours, again split across 2 days, 5.5 hours on one day, 6.5 on the other. That is all to take place on Saturday and Sunday, but first of all, we have the grid over 3 qualifying sessions for TCE, GT4, GT. Then the GT3s get their turn, again with predominantly 3 different drivers. With this session, the first of 6 entries superb and the back not any better.
Pretty much every race over, who's ever driven them will say, yeah, that's just got to be the greatest. That's what talked about before, that also racing this week is so incredibly popular with so many drivers and teams. And it's, of course,
Get the feeling that there's almost a feeling of there's not much time to waste here. Have people seen a forecast to suggest that maybe the dry track is a limited thing? I don't know. I think this first 15-minute session will remain dry, but here then is Julian Hansis right on the ragged edge of track limits, although bear in mind track limits from a Creventic point of view does include the curb as well, so you can be right on the back edge of the curb even with the merest amount of tyre and your lap will still count. But track limits are so crucial in qualifying, because if you breach them, that's your lap deleted.
Absolutely, and here, especially at Spa, you know, you've got so many corners that lead onto long straights that you get a track limit there, and that's completely ruined your lap. As we see the Hansis car coming up, one of the Vortexes, really interesting French manufacturer, running in the GTX category. We've seen them very much part of this series for some time now. Usually looking at a distinctive orange livery on those cars, so slightly unusual to see a white livery, but Hansis would have lost time on that lap, unfortunately. Of course, race winners in their class last time out with the Motorsport team in this very distinctive blue and white H&R liveried car, and always an ever-present threat in terms of fighting for points and for the championship in this category.
Remember, it's an individual set of tyres per qualifying session. You're not allowed to change tyres partway through each 15-minute segment either. So Julian Hansis was given a set of Michelin tyres at the start of this session, probably brand new ones, and will have been told by the team, right, you can use these as much as you want to a degree, but then the flip side of that is you've got to then use this set of tyres at some point in Saturday and Sunday's race. It's a combined affair, as in it is a 12-hour race, but it's separated across 2 days, and at some point during those 12 hours you have to use all of your qualifying tyres, the slick tyres that are used.
Yeah, weather permitting, obviously. That's the only caveat, isn't it? Is if it rains, of course, that goes out the window.
Yes.
Pretty obvious, really. Julian Hansis, purple sector 1, crosses line 143.8. No, sorry, 223.8. I misread that completely. Yeah, so hadn't improved after they get in a bit of traffic through the middle sector behind Vortex. So really interesting here. The quicker cars on track at the moment are understandably the Porsche 911 GT3 Cup, the 992 derivatives. There is also a standalone event for these cars here at Spa, which is always incredibly well supported, and that will be action will be brought to you by us as well, so catch that later in the year. And it always gets an absolutely massive entry of real quality teams and drivers, as has here at Spa. We've got 13 of the cars in the Porsche 911 GT3 Cup category. Of course, these are the cars that we will have all seen racing in things like the Porsche Carrera Cup of various different countries and the Porsche Super Cup back in the day. These are slightly older generations, so as the Vortex, the 702 car, comes into the right-hander, that's Thierry Ciocandali that Johnny was talking about here. He's now dropped to 3rd in class. Alberto Di Martin in the Mercedes AMG in GTX category is currently quickest on 2:23.114 in that particular class. 3 cars in that category. 2 of the Vortex, Vortices, that's it.
Very good. Yeah.
Plural of Vortex, trying to get that one right. Philippe Bonnell and Thierry Ciocandali we've just been looking at, and going to be interesting to see how they fare there. Quite often you see them in putting in some really, really strong lap times compared to the GT3 cars. It's obviously a very nimble car, And there is a prototype cup championship for these cars that's run with great success around Europe and especially in France.
Yes.
Other manufacturers like Ginetta competing in that as well with their CMR team that you'll know if you followed the Dubai 24 Hours that were running the Ginetta with Mike Simpson and Jack Mitchell on board this year at the 24 Hours and also and the Abu Dhabi race. They were looking very strong there. Unfortunately, a few dramas late on in the race, otherwise they had that category pretty much wrapped up. In fact, both the races. So yeah, going to be interesting. The little Ginetta link while we're talking about Ginetta is that Freddie Tomlinson, the son of Lawrence Tomlinson, he's going to be racing here in the Optima Motorsport. So we'll see Freddie in action later in the weekend. Not sure if he's qualifying the car today, but he certainly will be out in the race, and he's driving the Optimum McLaren GT3, so going to be interesting to see. They were looking very strong in free practice earlier. So,
well, there's only 3 drivers in that car, so he will absolutely have to be part of qualifying because you have to put a different driver into each segment of 3. So, but it depends where they utilise him. Similar to Moulin Motorsport, you might be wondering why Julian Hanses has been put into this first session, because he's silver graded by the FIA. Highly accomplished driver. Well, the reason is there's no AM in the 921 lineup, so you can't put an AM in the first session if you haven't got one. Makes sense.
Yeah, they're all very, very experienced, very quick guys.
They certainly are. And the thing is, they're going to have to leave all of them out. So Julian Hanses, Tim Scheerbart, who is mightily experienced with Moulin Motorsport, particularly in the Nürburgring Langstrecken series, the NLS, and therefore the 24 Hours there. You've got Conrad Levaux, who really impressed in Mugello, and Martin Rump, who is possibly even quicker than anybody I've already mentioned. So
especially around the Nürburgring.
Especially around the Nürburgring. So yeah, they will have had to decide which driver of those 4 they're not going to put into qualifying. Julian Hanses says, well, I've done enough now, and the gap is considerable at the sharp end because he's just pitted the car, and his qualifying time a 2:20.335 from Jerome Boulery, who's just got into second place because Igor Sorokin, I'm going to hand to Sarah in a minute, but Igor was second. He's now 3rd fastest, Sarah, but in amongst it, this doesn't decide things for good. It's done on the 3-lap average from the next session and the one after that. But let's get a feeling of what Igor thinks so far.
Tell us about that lap. You were, I believe, in first when you got out the car, dropped down to 3rd, but still an incredible lap, and it is the best of the 3 sessions.
Well, this is my personal best. I could not be happier. Yeah, I don't know about where I am standing on the grid, but my personal best by almost 1 point something seconds. So
that's a huge improvement. Congratulations. Are you enjoying the track here at Spa?
Yes, I love Spa. It's an amazing track. So really happy to be here, and even more happy to improve my personal best.
And quickly, show us the helmet you've got. It is pretty cool. Look at that. A GTA Vice City. Very nice. Congratulations, Igor.
That's the game I played when I grew up. That's the game I played when I grew up. So we decided to make helmet unusual, not the regular helmet style. And thanks to Massimo, Matt 56.
And really quickly, who's jumping in the car next for HRT?
Steven Gambrell.
Well, we'll be looking out to see where you guys end up. Thank you so much.
Right, so the top 6, the fastest cars in this session that are all 992s, have all already pitted. So they're not willing to actually see the session out. A couple of them had pitted at just beyond half distance, thinking, right, I can't go any faster on this particular set of tyres. We want to try and reserve this set of Michelins as much as we can because we'll have to use them for a stint in the race tomorrow or Sunday. So Fabien Dance was in fairly early, Jerome Boulery coming in as well for Seb Lajou Racing. Those that remain out, the GTX pace setter, which is the NM Racing Mercedes for Alberto Di Martin, although he's now come into pit lane. Still getting some laps in is Chazelle Technology Course for Jean-Mathieu Leandri, entered into the 992 AM part of the race. And TCE, fastest car there, the Ligier JS2R for Not Only Motorsport, Gino Rocchio in the 114 car, quicker than the JMEC Engineering BMW, the CWS Engineering Ginetta, and the Cupra from Asbest Racing. And I'm hearing that actually CWS Engineering, Colin White's crew, with Colin White actually at the wheel, made the late decision to move from GT4 into TCE, TCX category, because there's more cars to actually fight with then come this weekend's race.
And it's an often used word about, a term used about drivers that have been just involved in motorsport with such passion for so long. Stalwart, and Ginetta stalwart Colin White. CWS Racing, that distinctive black and green livery we've seen when Ginetta have been obviously part of things like the Toka support package with their GT series for the GT4 cars or spec cars, G50s, G55s, G56s and so on and so forth. And we've seen Colin very much take part in that, and always a great driver and a real character as well as doing short oval racing.
I was going to say,
he's real passionate.
You're going to mention National Hot Rods at some point, I hope.
David Addison is big into that, isn't he? So.
Well, so am I, actually.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, yeah.
There you go.
Easter Sunday, both Adders and I were at Northampton watching a big unlimited banger meeting, finishing off a few limos and hearses. That was a lot of fun.
Well, I've just moved down to a little place called Hailsham in East Sussex, and just around the corner from my house is Arlington Speed.
Oh, yes.
That's a place I've been to watch some fantastic motorsport over the years, as well as the home of the Eastbourne Eagles.
Yeah, yeah.
Speedway outfit. Anyway, so we're slightly off on the beaten track. It's great to see Colin here. Another driver that we didn't get a chance to mention in qualifying that's great to see. He was here racing last year in his BMW M3 is Kevin Clark. And here's a little link for you, Johnny. I raced with Kevin Clark at the Silverstone 24 Hours in 2006, I think it was. Also with Mike Jordan in the same car. It was an ex-Andy Prio BMW touring car with an M3 engine. And unfortunately, we had a problem with the exhaust later on in the race, didn't finish, but Mike had qualified the car very well. And I raced against Colin White.
Oh, no way.
As the guest car in the Ginetta Championship. In fact, it was the last time I ever raced a car, 2010. God almighty, isn't that a long time?
Time flies, doesn't it?
Someone has said I shouldn't have done it in the first place, but there you go.
Time has flown in that session as well.
Oh, sorry.
No, go on.
Finish the point. I think I might have actually tapped Colin into a spin at one point, totally accidentally. Sorry, Colin.
He had forgotten that until you just reminded him. Oops. Julian Hansen's quickest then by a fairly decent margin. It's a second that separates the Mulder Motorsport Porsche from Jérôme Bouillerie in his Seb Lajou Racing Porsche. But bear in mind, that's not a like for like. You've got a silver racer versus an AM non-professional racer in Julien Bouillerie. So actually, I think Jérôme might be quite chuffed with that to be just about within a second of someone as quick as Julian Hansen. And the Seb Lajou Racing crew are targeting getting maximum points in 992 AM. That is a championship that is currently led by the QMMF by HRT Performance squad, number 974, having taken the win in Mugello a couple of weekends ago. Igor Sorokin in the HRT Performance Porsche is in third position, ahead of Fabian Dance and Ahmed Al-Emedi for the aforementioned QMMF by HRT. So 974 in the shake-up, but you can do a first session. The thing is, the grid is not entirely reliant on the times in qualifying 1, because then we have qualifying 2 with different drivers and different tyres, qualifying 3 with a new set of Michelins and a different driver, and then you add those times together, divide by 3 to get an average, which it can be a very different look to the grid by the time we get to the end of qualifying proper. Yeah,
and again, you mentioned earlier that the Mulliner car hasn't really got any amateur drivers in it, so you're going to get 3 very strong drivers all putting in similar lap times. Most of the time you'll see that there's a genuine sort of pro, semi-pro and AM, in certainly you're going to see a lot of that in the GT3 cars a little bit later on, and you do see a big mixture of times then, sometimes around here by several seconds between the pro and the AM. If the AMs are what we would refer to as a proper AM, in other words, has not really done a lot of racing, or maybe slightly older or whatever it may be, as opposed to some of the AMs who are not far off of a semi-pro in terms of performance. So it's a very wide spectrum of drivers within each category. I think the only sector that you really see or selection is the pros. They're all very, very fast. All the pros are are there for a reason. Especially, you know, when you look at some of the guys that are here this weekend, a good example being Klaus Bachler, who is effectively a factory Porsche driver, a super fast driver, knows that car inside out, and we will see Klaus in action a little bit later on.
Yeah, big fan of Klaus, and it won't be the first time he's taken part in the 24H series either, because I remember Klaus impressing a lot of people in it was either the Portimao or the Barcelona 24-hour a few years ago.
Yeah.
And even people on our team for that weekend weren't aware of the Austrian because he was still coming through. He was still quite early on in his career, and I said, oh, no. I know who Klaus Bachler is and his capability. And he was standout in all the sessions, got the fastest lap of the race, blah, blah, blah. I expect similar things around here this weekend, actually, from him.
The Porsches have looked very strong, and he's obviously in the Herberth Motorsport car with Max Moritz in the wonderfully liveried. It looks, when you get closer to it, just looks like a dark green car from a distance, but when you see it up close, it's actually a tartan design that they put on there, which is very cool. So as we see another very distinctive design coming out, and those of us that have followed sports car racing for many years will remember that sponsor, DeWalt, on the TVRs back in the day. How long ago was that then, Johnny?
British GT?
Something like that.
I think it probably was. Yeah, I can't remember the specific year, but
Payne, I think, was one of the drivers.
I had forgotten that, and then all of a sudden they come into sharp focus in that livery. DeWalt, a big NASCAR sponsor, I seem to remember as well. Yeah,
I think it was Matt Kenseth for many years that used to carry that.
Number 17.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Great driver, former champion, of course. So anyway, back to what we got on here. As Johnny's quite rightly said, we now have the second drivers in, new set of tyres. Possibly not for everyone. Majority of the grid, certainly the Porsches, I would imagine, will be on new set of Michelin slicks. What is interesting, though, is that this is an evolution of the regulation. So last year in this championship, you would have one set of tyres to be used by all three drivers across the session. So you put a brand new set on for the first session, and that would stay on throughout the three sessions. But there wasn't that specific regulation you mentioned earlier, Johnny, about having to use the tyres in the race. Those could just be used for qualifying because they were obviously being worked a little bit hard as we have a red flag. So let's see if we can get an understanding of what's caused that, and let's hope there's nothing too serious to worry about. But
there were yellows being shown between turns 4 and 5, which is the Kemmel Straight. Turn 4 is the final bit of Raidillon, and it's a Ginetta that has stopped on the Kemmel Straight. I'm actually grateful that it is a car that is either stalled or just broken down, because you can have monster crashes on the Kemmel Straight at times, with one car clashing with another. Think about Earl Bamber's Cadillac crash in the World Endurance Championship on that straight. Year before last was that. 928, which had just been released by the team, I reckon. HRT Performance is now getting pushed back by the crews, and because that car stopped within the confines of the pit lane, i.e. between the timing loop at pit in and pit out, the team are able to run up. Even if the car's parked in the fast lane, they're able to run up to the car to recover it and push it in the wrong direction down pit lane back to where they are based for the weekend. So this is the number 178 Ginetta G56 for Neil Muston, the Australian, for CWS Engineering. So Colin White had done his time and handed over to Neil, but it's not got very far at all. That was an outlap for Neil Muston.
Now, in
therefore
the race, what we quite often see is if there is a code 60 and there's an incident like this with a car that's stopped, quite often they will recover the car back to the pits, and there is an opportunity for the teams to work on the car, and it doesn't automatically get retired from the race. So whether that will happen in this instance, because obviously we're a much shorter session overall, we've got 13.5 minutes left of this segment, the second segment, and then another 15 minutes after that for the TCE, GT4, GTX and 992 categories. Last year they did it slightly differently here. They had the 992s and the GT3s out qualifying together, and they only had 2 segments rather than the 3. I think it might have been a timing thing, just to try and sort of, maximise or minimise the track time, whichever way you look at it. There we see the Mercedes, the 715 car that is currently on pole position for the GTX category. That's done a 2:23.114. which is around about, just over 3.5 seconds quicker than the second place Vortex. Julien Bordeaux has been in that car. You can see some of the real diversity here. We've got the 992s, and then just ahead of that, you saw the SEAT TCR, and then obviously the Mercedes GT4 car. And as you look back down the pit lane, you'll see some of the GT3 cars that will be just poking their noses out. Very distinctive Tracy Krone car, the Krone Racing green that we've seen racing for many years. We talk about liveries that you remember. Remember Tracy and his long-time driving partner Nick Johnson, that they would have shared cars there, like 430 maybe, going back that far.
Yes.
430 and that sort of generation of cars at Le Mans.
Certainly 458s.
It may well have been, yeah. I think even
but before that, I'm trying to remember whether I saw.
Yeah.
There've been a lot of cars, and for a long period of time, they were Ferraris rather than Porsches. But as well as being a supporter of the 24 Hours of Le Mans and other ACO-type racing, Tracy and Nick have been regulars within things like the NLS and the Nürburgring 24 Hours as well. So they've always needed sort of different cars and to redesign the livery so that it fits well on the new car body shape.
It's interesting as well. Nick Johnson's a good example, isn't it, of a driver who really found his ideal partner in Tracy Krone as in driving partner. And you've seen it over the years where you see a pro and an AM driver work together consistently. Another good example, you've got Matt Griffin, who drives with Duncan Cameron, of course. They've just moved across to Barwell in the Lamborghini from many years of Ferrari driving. Matt, of course, was a factory Ferrari driver for many years, and he's still very much affiliated. Lives out in Dubai now, does Matt? Saw him out there for the 24 Hours at the start of the year, and saw him at the British GT Media Day last week, so he's very much looking to that. But Matt and Duncan have driven together forever, so there's a similar sort of scenario that you see with certain drivers, and especially in sports car racing, GT racing, as we know, it is so much about the pro drivers developing the amateur drivers and helping them. Even simple stuff like looking at the data and seeing where they can improve. Most of the GT3 cars now have an onboard camera system, a live system, so you can see the engineers and the team can sit in the throughout the duration of the race and see exactly what the driver's seeing. So obviously what you get then is, I know it from some of the teams that I've been involved with in GT3, that the pro will be sitting there watching and even time coaching the AM driver. Just said, to make sure you're in the right gear through there, or change up a bit later, or brake a bit later, or whatever it might be. So yeah, it's fascinating how those partnerships and those develop and unfold over time. There is the 133 BMW that we can see there, which is great to see that car on the grid. James Collins now getting on board that car. Kevin Clark, you see there in the race suit in the middle. Brummy Kev, he's a lovely man, absolute lovely man. Someone that I actually got introduced to Kevin by a very much missed and much loved commentator friend of Brian Jones.
Oh yes,
who was quite literally the voice of Brands Hatch. Well. Hi, wide and handsome. Terrible impression. I'm sorry, Brian. You'll be turning your grave. But we lost Brian a few years ago. He's much missed. But I talked about the Brick Car series that I raced with Kevin in. He was very much the voice of Brick Car as well when that series was really unfolding in the mid-2000s, especially. Series now flourishing and running very well. They actually have a race here in the not too distant future, and you see a lot of fabulous mixture of teams and drivers now. Driver going back to the pits in the truck. It's not an ideal scenario. No one really likes that, but at least the car hopefully is going to be able to be repaired and get back out for the race.
I've been ferreting around for anything in the regulations which would prevent Neil Muston from rejoining the session if they can get the car back again and into the pit lane, and then CWS Engineering can sort the problem. But it looks like it's not going to even get there anyway. There's quite a strict rule, again, at Le Mans and in things like the World Endurance Championship and the European Le Mans Series. If you cause a red flag in a qualifying session, you're then generally not allowed to resume within it, and you get all your lap times deleted. But Creventic style racing, 24H Series racing, is a bit more forgiving in that respect. Whilst we're still on the red flag, the clock has stopped, by the way, 13.5 minutes still to go. Let's get to Sarah in the pit lane.
Down here with Oliver Smith. That's correct, right? And I'm just checking your last name. It is Oliver Smith. Good to see you here. You've said you've been around Spa many times before. How's it feeling at the moment? The track is pretty dry. We've been quite lucky so far.
Feeling very lucky at the moment with the weather. See what it does this weekend. But yeah, so far so good.
Are you third in the car?
Yes.
And I saw, obviously we're in now on a red flag, I saw the mechanics were crouching around the front left. What was going on there?
We were just checking the tyre. Yeah, no problem that I'm aware of. So
Nothing on the alignment or anything? Well, thank you so much. You getting in the car next? We have gone green, so let's get back to qualifying.
With 13 minutes to go and the big queue in the endurance pit lane, and we probably should talk about that actually. If you've never seen 24H Series racing and indeed qualifying before, well, it's not a hot pit lane generally speaking, and this is the case in the Dubai race at the start of the year, the 24 hours every January. We didn't have a hot pit lane in Mugello either, which means that the refueling does not take place in the conventional sense, in the conventional location right in front of the garages. Instead, there's a separate portion of the venue which is given the responsibility of refueling, and it was a quadrant in Mugello, close to pit in, so you come into the pits and then immediately turn 90 degrees right and into a little car park which had been set up as a refueling area. Here it's a bit easier to do because we have such a long pit lane. We've got the Formula 1 pit lane, which the exit for which is just the other side of La Source, but then the endurance pit lane snakes all the way down the inside of the wall on the run towards Eau Rouge. And the blend line doesn't actually finish until you crest the rise at Raidillon. So that second bit of the pit lane after La Source is where we're going to be refueling the cars this weekend. The only problem with that is it's a pretty tight area because it's the pit lane apron for those endurance pit lane areas. So there's got to be quite a bit of pre-planning, I suppose, logistics to think about when you are refueling the cars. And then when you're finally back into the race, oh, this is a good example of it, the perfect example, you can't just jump back onto the track. You have to stick to the endurance pit lane exit and make sure you don't cross the blend line on the exit as well, so you're not actually fully racing again at top speed until virtually you're on the Kemmel Straight once more.
Yeah, and that could be, you know, there's a good example. We've got multiple classes of cars. You've obviously, if you were in a GT3 car, for example, during the race, coming out of the pits, as we've just seen Luke Breukers do there. Luke, obviously fresh from his radical race earlier in the days.
Yes, busy boy
up to speed to the circuit compared to some of them. But if you do have that, with the best will in the world, you're going to lose time because you're going to get stuck behind a slower car coming out, and you absolutely can't do anything. It is, you know, like you're stuck in a, you know, when you get in a filter lane and what have you. But just one little point, just going back to Sarah's interview with Oliver Smith there, which I thought was quite nice. We heard Sarah talk to the driver earlier, Igor Sorokin, about his really funky crash helmet design. Did you notice the design of Oliver's helmet, who that was a replica of?
I didn't actually. I didn't even see it.
Mark Sura's helmet.
Okay.
It was, yeah, Mark Sura's helmet, and of course an absolute superstar of the 80s.
Yeah.
Formula 1 and World Sports Cars rallying. And so there you go.
Do we know why he's got Mark Sura's?
I don't know. Maybe he's mates with Mark Sura. I don't know. We'll have to see if we can find that one out. So there you go. There's a job for you, Sarah. Get the bit of background on where the Mark Sura replica helmet comes.
There'll be a reason. There'll be a reason for sure.
Mark actually in action in Goodwood last year in the Brabham BT52, I think it was, the turbocharged car. Of course, he raced for Brabham in the 86 season, wasn't it? 85, 86 season. 85 season. Taking over from François Hinault mid-season. And that, of course, was the first time they'd come back to Spa in Formula 1 for many, many years. They hadn't been racing here in Formula 1 since 1970. And then thereafter it was at Zolder and very briefly at Nivelles for a couple of Grand Prix in the early 70s. And then Zolder became its home. And then we're back to Spa in 1985, and thank goodness it's been here ever since. Yeah,
although Zolder's a great track. I still have never visited there, but they have their own 24-hour race there. Luke Breukers has been put into the number 909 Red Camel Jordans.NL Porsche. So that is one of the non-AM cars. It's Conrad Tox-Levaux for Moulner Motorsport, who, well, kind of tops the times, but he hasn't actually given us a qualifying time yet. Not had the opportunity to. When the red flag came out after we'd had 90 or so seconds of the session, and what was already a pretty tight affair, then all of a sudden you've got to do another outlap, and by the time we start to post meaningful times, we're going to have only about 8 minutes left of this session, so it's going to slip through their fingers very quickly indeed. Meanwhile, a track limits infringement at turn 3 for the number 102 Asbest Racing Seat means that time is disallowed. And all of a sudden, Jens Wolf has even less time at his disposal in the Seat Leon Cup Racer to find a good time. 6 in TCE, they're all in the TCX subdivision, by the way. 3 entries in GTX this weekend, and 13 992 cars, which will generate a superb race for 12 hours and give us a good idea, actually, of how the 992 Endurance Cup race might pan out at the start of September when we return with Creventic. But meanwhile, Enzo Julie for Seblaju Racing is starting to light up the timing screen. 2:26.8 so far for Enzo in the treble 8 car, but this is looking like a much better lap this time from the driver for the French crew, Seblaju Racing. They brought 2 Porsche Cup cars here again this weekend. One for Alessandro Tudisca in the 910, and as I say, Enzo Joly in 888. And here is Luc Breukers, purple through sector 1, purple through sector 2. He's trying to make the clean sweep with already half the session gone, Simon.
Yeah, so that car currently sitting down a little bit further in the 992 category, so currently in 11th place, but we're watching to see what Luke does. That's going to bring the car up the order for sure once he puts in a decent lap here, which is looking like, has he got the set? He has got the 3 purple sectors, and that's moved him to 2nd overall and 2nd in the 992 class.
But the interesting dynamic of, he certainly did have an absolute best through sector 1, but now Enzo Joly started a lap, he snatched that away from him. So I think for a split second all the purples lined up, but all of a sudden the Seblaju Racing car is going to threaten that time that's been set by Luc Breukers.
Couple of tenths up as well, so it's quite a big chunk. That's the you know, the 1st and the 3rd sectors are the shortish. They're 30-something seconds. 39.583 is purple at the moment in sector 1, and 36.086 is purple in sector 2, whereas over a minute, 1:04 for sector 2. That gives you an indication of just how long that middle sector is and how much time can be gained or lost. And it's this driver here, Tox Leveau, who is in the Michelin Motorsport car, that is currently, oh sorry, actually it was Tox Leveau, that wasn't the Michelin car we were looking at, my apologies, but it is Tox Leveau who's going very, very quickly, now gone to cement their time at the top of the timing sheet with a 2:23.35 in the first session and a 2:34.484 in the second session. So very strong Julie, looking good as well, as we see this gaggle of cars coming out of the final turn and crossing the line. And I think we'll maybe shake things up to see the GTX cars in the background. We saw that the Mercedes-AMG GT2 car, now Manuel Lau on board that car. That's still quickest in the GTX category. Quickest in the TCE category is currently, where it's just changed. No, it hasn't. Oh, apologies. Filippo Tonaghi in the Not Only Motorsport Ligier JS2. There's another wonderful name from the past, isn't there, Ligier? Still great to see that brand back out racing again. They've seen them run prototypes as well in the Cup.
JSP4s, yeah.
And
and produced LMP3s these days as well. Here's the 888 car, which within the session is fastest so far. So Enzo Joly, mightily impressive. On the average times, this car is 2nd fastest, you can see from the graphics tower, but the quickest driver in this session, and therefore in either of the 2 sessions, is the 888 car. This is the 14th placed car, though, of Fernando Gonzalez with Escuderia Firon, Spanish outfit, 9:49 going slowly. And was that a tyre down? I didn't quite.
I don't know if he had a problem or whether
he was just backing up to getting by himself some space, perhaps.
Through, but whatever it was definitely going significantly slower. We just saw a brief shot there of the Mercedes, the GT2 car, the NM Racing, that's currently 7th overall in this class and quickest in the GTX class by some way. He's done a 2:23.114 in this session, and the next quickest GTX car is the Vortex of Julien Bolo, which has done a 2:26.388.
So Michelin Motorsport as a duo that we've had so far. Remember, for the first session they put Julian Hanses in it. Now we've got Conrad Leveau, the Dane, and when you add their 2 times together and divide by 2, you get a 2:20.6 which is quickest so far collectively, 2:20.909 as an average for the 888 car, which is in second position, and then third fastest for Luke Breukers, who in this session I think is also third. Yeah, this session alone, Breukers third fastest, behind Laveau's time and behind Enzo Jollet. A little bit over the curb and the gravel for the HRT performance car for Stephen Gambrell, and Gambrell in 9:28 is fifth in this session, but fourth in the average lap times, 9:28. Can I remember who they put in for that? Oh, it was Igor, wasn't it? Igor Sorokin, who went in for the first stint, and their second selected driver is Stephen Gambrell. Good to see James Kellett's getting some racing in as well. I know James was in Mugello, but he wasn't in a car, looking after maybe coaching and sort of prepping cars, but this time he actually gets a drive here at Spa.
He was a star of the Dubai 24 Hours. My driver of the weekend, personally, was on for a class win and a podium, and with, I can't remember how many minutes it was left, but it wasn't long. I think it was well under half an hour. Unfortunately, I had a mechanical issue which put the car out of the race, which was heartbreaking. I saw James immediately afterwards. I was out there, and I just looked at the poor guy's face. He'd done such a brilliant job, and he was on double duty that weekend as well. He was driving two cars in that race. If you remember, he was driving both the Paradigm competition cars.
I do remember that.
He was flipping from one to the other. So he'd had a fairly serious workout. Was in action, of course, last weekend in GT World Challenge, again with Paradigm in the BMW. Yeah, very, very talented young man. It's great to see him getting his breaks, and very likeable guy as well. So I'm hoping he has a good weekend this weekend for him.
Another time deleted, this time in GTX for the Michel Sallenbach-driven Vortex 2.0. So the current lap that he's on is going to be deleted because of a track limit problem at turn 3, which is coming out of Eau Rouge and climbing Raidillon. Very easy to just drop a couple of tyres, or 4 tyres more crucially, off the road surface, and it becomes an illegal time. Joly purple again through sector 1, but he was slightly slower than he'd managed to this point through the middle sector, the longer sector in the 888 car. Let's see whether he can extend the gap yet further. Already quickest in this particular session, and that is an improvement for Enzo Joly. So going really well, 2:20.270 now for the Seblejoux Racing man, and he is 0.6 of a second clear, actually, of Conrad Laveau's time. That's still not quite enough, though, to elevate Joly and Seblejoux to provisional pole position, because on the averages, he's 1.5 off.
Sorry, Johnny, your point earlier was absolutely valid in that the car that is currently quickest, the Motorsport car, the times between the two drivers that have been out so far, 2:20.335 by Julian Hanses and 2:20.866, so only half a second between them. Whereas if you look at the second place car, the Enzo Joly car that's quickest in this particular segment, Enzo's done a 2:20.270, but his colleague in the first session did a 2:21.219. So there's a graphic example of how the averaging out works, and why the Molnar car is in such a strong position, because it has a similar level of quality of driver across all 3 segments. So well, I haven't had the third one yet, but you get my point.
No, absolutely. And from a 992 AM perspective, actually Seblejoux will be very happy with this, because they have a buffer now of the 909 car sitting between them and everybody else in AM. HRT Performance are second in 992 AM, but the crucial thing is that on the average time so far, 888 are managing to outperform Red Camel Jordans.nl. We've only had 2 sessions, as Simon makes the point, and it could change again once the final the final segment of 15 minutes of this trio is completed. But Conrad Tox-Lavaux keeping Molnar Motorsport's head above water by 1.5 or so over a chasing 888 car. And I wonder what more Seblejoux Racing might have up their sleeve in the 888 car. They have a choice of, well, potentially 3 other drivers, but Enzo Joly on paper should be their quickest. other AM drivers. So we had Jérôme Bouillerie in the first session, Joly in the second session, and then they have a choice of either Sébastien Lejeune himself, Stéphane Perrin, or Anthony Vince to put into the treble 8 for the final session. Of the three, Mercedes over the line. This is the car entered into GTX, which is the fastest car in GTX so far, the NM racing car of Manuel Lau, 715. But session 2 of 3 done for the TCE, the 992s, the GTXs, etc. More reaction from Sarah Esser.
Follow driving the Vortex 701. Vortex had quite a story over in Mugello. Great to see them back here with 2 cars this time at Spa. How's the car feeling?
The car is feeling great. This session was absolutely perfect. This morning we were slow. Now everything was okay, so they did a fantastic job. We could have been slightly faster, but it's been really, really fun.
Can you feel the track evolution, and do you think that will continue through qualifying?
I would assume so. I'm not sure I'm qualified to tell you that. I wish I were. But no, I think the track is getting better as well, so the GT3 will have fun.
Well, looking forward to seeing the Vortex out all weekend. Hopefully it makes it to the end. Always got the top spirits to make sure they never give up.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Julian.
Yeah, so still some discussions maybe being had. Tight-lipped guest there for Sarah. I've just noticed that there is at least one car, no, more than one car, with only actually 2 drivers that have been put in the allocation for the Ligier of not only Motorsport and for Crubillet Sport, with just Pascal Duhamel and Sébastien Crubillet himself. So they have to go back into the cars to complete the 3 sessions. So in some cases we have cars with 5 drivers in, as is the case with the 888 and the 910. And then there are at least 2 cars here with just 2 drivers who are going to be busy, very, very busy over the course of the next 2 days. There is some damage on the rear of the NM Racing Mercedes. It hasn't really hampered its pace. Meanwhile, was this the clash between a Vortex? No, it's not, is it? Ah, way off in the background. That's how the Mercedes picked up its damage then, the NM Racing Mercedes, and then the diffuser is flapping away, having been torn asunder in the gravel trap. That tends to be what happens when you leave the track at high speed at Blanchimont and scrape the whole of the under tray through the stones there.
It's a very, very scary moment in any car at any time, but you know, you're going to be 130, 140 mile an hour through there in one of those cars. It's going to focus one's attention, I think, is a good way of putting it. But yeah, to get away with a broken splitter, I think is actually not such a it wouldn't be a bad shout at the end of it. He said, right, okay, you're going to go off there. What do you reckon the damage is going to be? So get away with a broken rear diffuser or splitter or something like that. Yeah, not ideal, but certainly a lot worse it could have been. So yeah, interesting to see if they can get that car turned around and back out quickly. I'm going to see a change of drivers when we get it back out on circuit. So hopefully the car will be still running very well. So interesting there what would happen obviously in the event, and I think we've seen it before with cars having either an incident or a mechanical problem, is if they don't complete all 3 sessions, and obviously they only take an average of the 2, and then automatically that pushes you down the order. So
yes,
it's, in a way, it's no different if you were a solo driver and you don't set a time. It kind
yes.
of, you know, it's clearly going to put you at the back of the grid because, you know, for whatever reason you might have some sort of a drama like that.
From memory, the regulations read that first of all, you order all the cars with 3 times in timing order. Then if you've only managed 2 times, they go in behind them on the grid, and then only a single time in behind as well. So it sort of makes sense, but you have to, ideally, for a good grid position, have all 3 times to your name. Here's Sarah again.
Filippo Tornaghi. This is going to be one for the Italian fans. I'm going to ask him the questions in English and he's going to respond in Italian. But Filippo, 2 drivers in the car for you this weekend. You did the middle stint. How's the car feeling? You were looking extremely happy when you got out.
Yeah, I'm very happy. Sono felice perché comunque è la prima volta qua a Spa, stati veramente forte. E sì, siamo 2 piloti, io e Gino Rocchio che fa il primo e il terzo stint. E io faccio il secondo, quindi vediamo come va in gara, però per adesso siamo veramente piazzati veramente bene. Ho fatto un 2.37 e vediamo cosa riesce a fare Gino nell'ultimo stint, che dovrebbe essere quello un pochino migliore, e vediamo cosa tiriamo fuori. Quindi sono molto felice e vediamo domani la gara è lunga, quindi incrociamo le dita.
Well, I can't pretend that I understood anything that you said, so I hope I don't ask a question that you've already responded to. But Spa, how do you feel about the circuit? Are you enjoying it out here?
Yeah, very, very much. It's a circuit very difficult, but very wow. When you did the Eau Rouge curve turner, it's incredible, very, very incredible. It's a track very, very long, and yeah, it's my first time here, and I'm so happy for this result, and we will see tomorrow and Sunday.
Any sectors of the track that you're particularly focusing on to improve on? Any sectors of the track that you're specifically focusing on for looking for improvements?
Specific, probably the tires. Probably it's very difficult to use, and we will see.
Well, thank you so much, Filippo. Wonderful to chat with you, and looking forward to your weekend here. Enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Thank you. Bye.
The one bit of Italian I did pick up there is that the word for stint in Italian is stint.
Stint, yeah.
So
40 as well, which I think is like, you know,
forza.
Forza,
yeah.
Which is pretty cool. So yeah, so that basically established that between the three of us that are here today, languages is not our forte. However, tomorrow...
Forte, that's an Italian word.
Tomorrow we're joined by the wonderful Carla Velti, who speaks about 7,000 languages, I think. She seems to, every single driver she seems to interview, she seems to know her language. No, all seriousness, I seem to remember a conversation with her where she definitely speaks 4, which is pretty impressive, I think you'd agree. On board with the AAA of Seb Lajou, and going to be very interesting to see how this final section plays out. Tim Shearbath on board the Motorsport car.
Shearbath in, okay. Interesting.
Yes. So James Kellett, we were talking about earlier, on board the 928. So going to be interesting to see how much further. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see James quickest in this particular session. Having said that, there are such a high quality of drivers in this. It's going to be very, very close. Rick Breukers, another driver that we know is so fast in this, A, at this circuit, and B, in these cars. So going to be very, very close, I'm sure.
So yes, Seb Lajou Racing is, Seb Lajou in the Seb Lajou Racing car is an interesting decision in 888. Jérôme Bouillerie appears to be back in the 910, or was he in the 888 to start with? So have they just switched him from one car to the other? I think that is the case. So Bouillerie did the first qualifying session with 888, and he's now in 910. He is eligible to drive both cars during the race as well. Lionel Amrouche, who was a regular driving the GC Automobile, which was the kind of precursor to the Vortex years ago, is now in the number 10 car. But somebody who's certainly impressed both Simon and I from our perspective during that last session, Enzo Julie, now with a chance to catch up with Sarah.
I mean, look at that timing. You were just talking about Seb Lajou Racing, and here I am. I've managed to pull Enzo out. You were in the car second. You had class pole over in Mugello. Do you think you can do it this weekend?
Yeah, I think we can do it, but I think HRT have a very good driver in Q3. So we will see, but we had 2 good quali for now. Seb is in the car for Q3, so let's see. But we cross the finger for it.
And how are you finding the track? Our commentators were saying you really impressed them.
Yeah, the track is really nice. I love Spa. Unfortunately, there is some parts with gravel and quite a lot of traffic still, even if we are separate from GT3. But it was a good session, and I'm really enjoying the track. Sorry.
And talk about the importance of qualifying going into a 12-hour race. Well, tomorrow will be 5.5, 6.5 on Sunday.
Yeah, for a 12-hour race, we cannot say quali is super important, but it's good for the team. If we can catch the pole, everybody will be happy, and we'll start better the race for tomorrow.
Well, Enzo, thank you so much for having a chat. I no doubt you'll have a keen eye on the rest of qualifying to see where you finish up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Still only 21, hailing from Montpellier in the south of France. So he'll be going to his home event next time out, with the 12 hours of Le Castellet. But has featured in the Porsche Carrera Cup France for Martinet by Almeira's team, with a couple of races already this year in Porsche Carrera Cup, and he's also a previous GT4 France champion at silver level. So he's definitely somebody we should be paying attention to. Mercedes back out again, still flapping though, Si.
It does, yeah. I just noticed that as it came into view, you could just see the bodywork underneath. I don't even know if it's actually the diffuser or part of the floor itself. It looks like it was a bit more central to the car. And initially, when we both spotted it, it did look like the diffuser, but I think it's a bit further down, which maybe is why it's not picked up on it. Perhaps it wasn't immediately obvious. If you know, unless you put the car up and had a look underneath, you wouldn't necessarily know. So could be a factor as to why that's happening. The car is still quickest. Neil Montserrat on board the car now, Spanish driver. We just see the BMW now heading in ahead of the cars, with Oliver Smith on board now, and his Mark Sura designed crash helmet. Not designed. I don't think Mark actually designed it. Well, maybe he did, but back in the day. Former factory BMW GT racer, of course, when you had Group 5 racing and in the late 70s, and went on to race Porsches and other things, and Ford as well. In fact, I remember seeing him race, show me age now, in the early 80s at Brands in the Ford C100. There's a blast for the past. That's something that will go down well with our learned colleague, Mr. Hindhoff, if he hears that, a reference to a car like that. So, yeah, some great cars, a great period of sports car racing, as we are now in today's race.
Yeah, certainly is.
Yeah, ever. So, Tim Schumacher on board the Mulmer is Mulmer Motorsport 911 GT3 Cup car. They are currently quickest with an average of 2:20.866. Such an impressive pair of sessions so far. Kellett 2:22.6273 on his first flying lap. Now, you made a point earlier, Johnny, about the tyre allocation. A lot of gravel there. I think that's what we heard Enzo Julie referring to. He said there's a lot of gravel on the circuit, and on the exit of Eau Rouge, it's going to potentially cost a lot of time in terms of traction. You know, get on the power, and the car's squirming around, especially in the Porsches with, you know, all this power going through the rear tyres. But yes, Kellett on board now is going to be a driver to watch. Let's have a look and see. His first lap was a 2:22.623, so a couple of seconds off. He's not been able to improve on his personal best. We are seeing purple sectors coming out now.
That's the thing. Faisal Al-Yafai has just put in 2:19.948. We haven't had anybody in the 2:19s across all of the 3 sessions so far, and that elevates the QMMF by HRT performance car up to second in the session. The Ginetta has managed to take part in this third part of the day. However, it's now missing a wheel down at Campus Corner. So how did that wheel detach, and precisely how did that happen? Surely, though, the session cannot stay green. Yeah, indeed, because, well, Philip Hamprecht, who's also right up there in the time, who do now go red flag with 6 minutes and 4 seconds remaining. So there'll still be an opportunity to gather everybody in the pit lane and get this session back up and running too. But unfortunately, for the second time in as many sessions, it is the CWS Engineering Ginetta which has caused the red flag. The first one fairly innocuously, where it was stranded on the Kemmel Straight, I think with all 4 wheels still on the wagon on that occasion. This time, though, a wheel coming off. I can't tell where it is. It's a left side wheel. Driver scampering for safety, and thankfully gets the inside of Campus Corner for the Ginetta from CWS Engineering. Still Neil Mustin, apparently.
So, yes,
he's not having a day, to remember.
Mustin, so maybe because he didn't really get a run in the second part, they pumped in him for the third. He's not having a very good day, poor old Neil, bless him, is he? Come all this way from Australia, and yeah, can't even get over the fence there. He's stuck, bless him. So, yeah, frustrating. Hopefully, it is just a wheel that's come off, as in it may be a cross thread or something like that maybe has caused it, as opposed to a breakage. You can see the car squirming under the brakes. It's at the bottom of the shot there. And, well, first of all, exceptionally lucky to keep the car on the road.
Yes.
I would say, not at least end up in the gravel with a situation like that, let alone potentially even worse into the wall. So whilst it was, you know, the bit, oh my goodness me, that's the second time I've seen that, and each time it makes me go cringe. I can't look away.
I didn't see that first car past him the first time around, I have to say, though, and that was a Porsche that needed to go to the high side and take a lot of curb. It's the rear left, I reckon, that has come off the Ginetta.
Yeah.
So it was already loose and steering him probably from the rear as well. So he's turning in thinking, well, this is the normal amount of steering input I put into Campus Corner, and the car's oversteering massively on me, because that rear wheel has got a mind of its own. And then finally it did detach entirely and roll to the inside of the circuit where the marshals are going to go to now. But obviously the car itself will need to be towed away too, and probably have to be lifted onto a flatbed. It's not going to be towed with only 3 wheels still present. And then it's a question of who lights up their tyres as quickly as possible going through. But as I say, mightily impressive lap time from Faisal Al-Yafai. Rick Broik is now fastest in the session by 0.005 of a second. Here's the Ginetta moment again, and the car's already starting to move from the rear just as it drops to the bottom of the frame there, and the camera whips round to catch the rear left wheel and tyre that finally come off.
Yeah, I think fortunately for Neil, it clearly had started to come loose just before he got onto the brake, so he probably had a little bit of warning. Maybe he was able to brake a bit earlier, and it didn't catch him out as much as it would have done had it come off mid-corner.
Yeah.
So certainly not ideal, but infinitely better than the other option, and he's probably on first name terms with the recovery truck driver now, Neil. Probably going for dinner with him later or something like that. Bless him. So let's hope that it's nothing too serious. Still cars making their way back to the pits. Now, what's really going to hurt a lot of the drivers with this is obviously, as you quite rightly said, in most cases they will have had a brand new set of tyres for this particular session, so 3 sets across the 3 sessions. The fuel load is coming down because it's the same amount of fuel that you run. You mentioned about refueling earlier, Johnny, and that's obviously once we're into the race mode, but for qualifying,
you can't refuel, and I'm not sure we actually mentioned that from the regulations.
Yes.
So you start with a set amount of fuel, and then the car gets lighter and lighter and lighter.
So last year, when the regs were that you had 1 set of tyres and 1 fuel load for the 3 drivers, you would argue that potentially the middle of the 3 drivers would have the best combination. It had a bit less fuel, but the tyres were still pretty good.
Yes.
Whereas your last session, which is predominantly your pro driver, would have had great fuel load, but tyres would have been way past the best. So that's why, one of the reasons why I think they've kind of changed the regs. But what I was going to get to is with 6 minutes remaining, you do an out lap. So we're looking at, on a flying lap, is a 2:19.943 is the quickest lap we've seen. So let's round it up to 2:20. So you're going to get round in probably, I'd say your out lap's going to be a good 10 seconds slower than that, or maybe 5 seconds, certainly, if you're pushing like crazy. And you may well get round in that. So straight away, you've then probably the absolute best got 2, maybe 3 laps if you're one of the first cars out. If you're later out the pit lane, so if I was team manager, I'd probably be trying to get my driver around, you know, at the bottom of the pit lane ready to go. In fact, I'm going to have a look out the window and see if anyone's doing it. Yes, there are. There is a queue of cars that are already lining up to get ready to go. And anyway, the point I'm making is if you're one of the last cars to get out, then you're disproportionately going to be struggling. I would say you definitely only get 2 laps.
Yes.
So that's going to hurt. But also, tyres have been through a heat cycle now. Everyone's done at least 1 flying lap, maybe 2, and taken the absolute best out of the tyres. This would have been another lap where probably a bit of driver getting his eye in, or her eye in, depending on how you look at it. And also, you know, the car perhaps getting that little bit lighter with fuel. So you would have been improving as the session had gone on in that respect, but the tyres obviously balance out with the amount of grip you've got. So, yeah, it's going to be a lot of people who feel that will struggle to improve when they go back out for that simple reason. The tyres have just got hot, got colder, and got hot again. You know,
yeah, and it's about how they get cold, at what rate, and then also how you then bring them back in again. But the drivers can't afford to take their time in reheating the tyres, because it's just not going to be that amount of time left on the clock. So 6 minutes in total. An out lap's going to account for 3 of those minutes, and then it's a question of, yeah, like 1 or 2 laps. But if you're at the back of the queue, which is quickly forming now, everyone wants to get to the track as quickly as they can, but the red light greets them for the time being as this Ginetta is still being recovered. Very easily can see a situation where the last car to join the session, you get 1 opportunity to improve on their time.
Exactly. And there's 22 cars started the session. Obviously, we're seeing the Ginettas clearly not going to take any further part in this session. So just looking down to see if there's anyone else that may not restart. I don't think so. I think everyone's getting ready to go. Looking down the pit lane, we've got about 12 cars currently lined up, ready to go. Mixture of the three classes that are there. And just a reminder that where we are in terms of pole positions for each sector. So we've got Tim Shearbath, who's currently on board the Michelin Motorsport car, which at the moment is pole position overall in the session and in the can't really call it the pro class, it's the non-AM class, isn't it, for the 992s?
Yeah.
A pole for the AM class was that stunning lap by Faisal Al Yafei in the QMMF by HRT car, that beautiful purple coloured car that's in the very distinctive Oman colours, which looks brilliant. And then pole position for GTX.
Qatar colours, you mean?
Sorry.
Qatar, you said
Qatar,
Oman.
sorry,
Qatar
did I say
colours.
Oman?
Yeah.
My apologies.
Yeah, which is a sort of, how did Abdullah Al-Khalifi described it to me yesterday, a burgundy.
A burgundy.
A burgundy QMMF.
I think that's
from the flag.
A bit like the flag, I was going to say. That's just, if using my knowledge of flags of the world, which is not very good.
Well, I suggested to him that it might be maroon, and he said, no, burgundy. I said, okay.
Isn't it interesting how we define certain colours, isn't it? It's like, you know, I always remember that there were certain colours that my grandparents would refer to, that you don't hear those sort of, you know, fawn is a word that springs to mind.
Yeah.
A fawn pair of slacks. Is there a more 70s granddad thing to say than wearing a fawn pair of slacks?
But they were never, you couldn't call it a different colour. You couldn't say cream slacks.
No.
It had to be
It
fawn.
wasn't beige, it was fawn.
beige.
Very definite.
Yeah.
So burgundy and a maroon is another one I think that springs to mind, that kind of era. Anyway, look, really are filling now, aren't we, where we're waiting for the session.
I thought you were just describing to me Austin Allegro upholstery colours.
Well, there you go. Nothing wrong with that. Somebody showed me a picture of the interior of a car they were looking at today, and it was fawn. That was the only car. It was actually a Porsche as well. I think it was a 996 Porsche. And they're like, look at this. This is really 90s. I went, excuse me, that's very 70s.
Yeah. Yes.
As someone who grew up in that decade, I remember seeing on seats those colours back in the day. My granddad's cars and my dad's cars and things like that.
Pretty dull, but they have their own, I don't know, allure these days.
Isn't it funny how things have come round, though, isn't it? Cars that were very everyday cars that are now really quite valuable and
True.
a lot of interest in that. We see the pit lane getting ready. In the background, you can see the Michelin Motorsport Ferrari, one of the two Ferraris that's racing in this category, that and the Era Motorsport. Easy to tell them apart. The Michelin one, as you can see, in the very familiar Gulf colours, the orange and duck egg blue. Is that right? Duck egg blue? I think that's the correct.
Sounds good,
isn't it? We're seeing as we're doing a description of colours. And then just the other car, which is also very easy to see, is the purple and white Era Motorsport Ferrari. So it's quite easy to tell those two cars apart when they're out on track. Not always the case with some of the other cars, as we see. Okay, there's a very distinctive car on the left there, the Optimum Motorsport. Optimum joining the grid this week, which is fabulous to see. And the McLaren, haven't seen a McLaren in the series this year, in the European Series yet. So
Yeah, indeed. And there was an additional line in yesterday's drivers' briefing, by the way, held in Malmedy, wonderful place, when there was a car parade down to Malmedy from the track for them to assemble in the town square there, and then straight into the drivers' briefing. And the point was made by Zander Duhaus that cars that will be in the GT3 sessions are able to access the fueling area during this final 992 and GTX session, but please do not attempt to join the track at any point in the remaining 4 minutes, because we will then have cars mixed up and there'll be a big penalty for that. So there are actually officials at the very end of the endurance pit lane saying, stay where you are, we're watching you. If you're just fueling the cars, that's fine, but please do not join the session, because this is not your time to do it.
Yes, and makes perfect sense. Now, we were talking about this young man earlier, James Kellett, who would appear he's got himself in a really good position to maximise the remaining time, both in terms of having a clear head, getting to the line first of anyone, so therefore having the maximum time that you've got. As you can see, we're now down to 3.5 minutes remaining of this session. Of course, that includes, once you cross the line, as long as you cross the line with 1 second to go, then you can get one more lap in, which is exactly what James is going to be trying to do here, to get as many laps in as he can. Get in the tyres. He's pushing very hard on this outlap as well. So you can see he's obviously really doing everything he can to get himself and the car absolutely on the limit. And let's have a look and see if it's registering sector times already. So that is, where are we? Lost him there, 928. Yeah, I think he's already done a green sector 2. So he's clearly got the car and himself dialed in now for the remainder of this session into the fearsome Blanchimont corner and getting himself ready to go for what will be a very important lap to see if he can move that car up the qualifying order. Currently sitting 5th in the 992 category in the HR2 performance car.
Let's, before the times really start to come in at a quick rate, get to Sarah very quickly before the session is completed.
Steve Muren's now with me. Bit of a family affair. Brothers all in the car. How's that competitively?
Yeah, that's quite nice. We are all 3 brothers with almost the same lap times, and we are also one friend group who prepare the car, and yeah, it's a really nice hobby for us.
Tell us more about the team. How long have you been together, and how long have you been racing as brothers?
Racing we do now, I think, around 6 years, but the friend group, we are friends from, I think, from 3 years old. It's really nice.
So quite a little time. Not going to guess how old you are. I'm sure we can find that out online. Tell us your goals for the weekend. What would make a successful weekend out here in Spa?
First of all, we hope the car will be okay, because 1 week, 2 weeks ago we had a big crash and the car was prepared one day yesterday. So we hope the car will stay good, and I hope maybe place on the podium.
Well, thank you so much for having a chat with us, Steve. Steve Murens from MM Racing.
Well, it sounds like they had a very close call in even getting the car here at Spa, then, if it was only ready one day before yesterday. So that's Wednesday, basically, knowing that they are ready to go. Good little battle at the head of the order between Tim Scheerbart, who has done a 2:20.459 in car number 921, and now Abdullah Al-Khalifi, who's taken over the QMMF by HRT Performance car. Now, I was waxing lyrical in the 974 about his teammate, Faisal Al-Yafei. I wonder whether that was a driver ID hangover, and actually it's been Al-Khalifi in the car all along doing the 219s.
I think it must have been, to be honest, looking at it.
And Rick Roykers hasn't rejoined the session, so he's still parked in the pit lane in the Red Camel Jordans.NL car. I think that must be a decision from the team to say, we've done enough.
We've done enough, yeah. Well, that 219.943 is... It goes back to my point about probably the best have gone from the tyres. And, you know, we heard the interview there about how important is qualifying, where Sarah asked one of the drivers earlier, how important is qualifying for a 12-hour race. I think it was Enzo Juli. And he sort of was a bit kind of, yeah, it's great for the team, but it's not essential.
Yeah.
I think all of us that have followed endurance racing for some time know that, yes, it's nice to qualify near the front, and it's incredibly prestigious for certain races, the obvious big, 24-hour races. If you're on pole, if you're Alex Lynn last year in the Cadillac on pole, that's huge for a team like Motorsport and for Cadillac and for Hertz and for Alex himself. But then you get into the race and you have a very different race car in terms of a quali car. So, then there is an element that Scheerbart is in now, so he's clearly done enough. The checkered flag is out. Kellett, I think, is still on track, who we were talking about. He's gone quicker. His last lap is a 2:20.203, which is the quickest the car has done. And that pushes them up to 3rd overall. So it's still the Motorsport, the 921 car that's quickest. This is Kellett that we were talking about. Is he improving? Let's have a little look at his first sector. No, but it's very close to his best. So if he can improve in sector 2s and 3, that sounds very obvious. There is a chance they may move up. The average, though, I think, let's have a look, is a 2:21.4 for that car. So it's only less than 2/10 away from potentially moving up to 2nd if this last lap goes brilliantly for him. There's car 715 track limits. Been another pin, is that? So who's that? That's the Neil Montserrat Mercedes that we were talking about. But yeah, Kellett will be coming into the end of sector 2 any minute, and hopefully for him he'll find a green sector, or even better still, a purple one.
So we're waiting for James Kellett, who goes quicker again through sector 2 than he's managed to this point. He did a 2:20.203 the last time around, which is the 3rd best time within this session, and now brings up his HRT Performance crew to third fastest, which is what you mentioned, Simon, behind Michelin Motorsport, behind Red Camel Jordans.nl. So this is the fight to be the quickest 992 AM trio. And Abdullah Al-Khalifi, is he still there or thereabouts? I don't think he's fast enough through the second sector with a 1 minute and 5, and Kellett goes faster than anybody, so he's managed to go quicker than anybody through all 3 of the sessions there with a 2:19.810, faster than Rick Breukers, faster than Abdullah Al-Khalifi, faster than Philip Hamprecht, who we haven't mentioned a great deal about because he parked it quite early on in the session, but drives with Tracy Crone for RPM Racing. A 2:19.810 is truly spectacular for James Kellett. Still doesn't improve the team's overall position, but they do get pole in 992 AM, and Sarah's been waiting very patiently down at Michelin Motorsport. Hopefully you still have one of their drivers, Julian Hanses, to get his reaction.
I don't just have one, I have all 3. Oh. Conrad, Julian and Tim. Look at that, worth waiting. Congratulations, gentlemen. Incredible times from all of you.
Yeah, I had thank you to the team, to my teammates, brilliant job. Nice weather today, so we are really happy and looking forward to tomorrow.
Well, you'll be starting towards the front, obviously behind the GT3s. How important is it to get pole? What does it actually mean to the team?
Sorry, I was just not focusing once again.
How important is it to get pole?
It was super important for the team because the team is also based here. So I think 5 or 10 minutes from here, so it's like the home race. So we try everything to get the victory home tomorrow.
Does that mean lots of friends and family will be popping down to support you throughout the weekend?
100%, yes. A lot of people come to support us, and we are looking forward to the challenge.
And Conrad, plan overnight and into tomorrow. What sort of things are you going to go away, look at, review ahead of the race tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to look at some data after the practice here, and then just relaxing for tomorrow, and yeah, that's it.
And there's 2 parts of the race this weekend, 12 hours. What's the priority for the first half tomorrow?
Just to stay on the lead lap, that's the most important, and then the second race is just, yeah, winning.
Well, congratulations again. Conrad, Julian and Tim from Michelin Racing, Michelin Motorsport.
Yeah, so the 3 drivers that took part in qualifying actively, there is a 4th member of their driving crew, Martin Rump, and I wonder whether they're keeping the Estonian as a secret weapon up their sleeve so that he comes into the reckoning during the race. We all know about his pace as well. There was a tough choice to make as to which 3 of the 4 they would utilise, but it has worked for them, and they are the quickest of the 992 cars, both in their own subcategory of 992 brackets non-AM, to be faster than all of the 2 cars entered in that division, and to be faster than all of the AM cars as well, despite James Kellett's best efforts, posting the best time across all 3 sessions as his last effort. So a really good time from James individually. On the average times, though, it's another pole position for Michelin Motorsport with Conrad Laveau, Tim Scheerbart and Julian Hanses, who we heard from, all 3 there, with a 2:20.553 as their average. Quicker than Red Camel Jordans.nl for Luke and Rick and Ivo Breukers, together with Fabian Dantz, who did the first 15-minute session in 9:09. Then the 928 crew get the 992 AM pole with their HRT performance car, the yellow and black machine from Germany, for Stephen Gambrell, Igor Sorogin and James Kellett. Jonathan Kearney, the Irishman, is the one driver that didn't take part in qualifying, but we'll see him in the race. The 974 QMMF by QMMF car, 4th fastest, ahead of the 888 in 5th position. In GTX, it was the 701 Vortex car that took 14th place, but was fastest in its division. And then in the TCX part of the race, the 114 car was quickest. That's the Not Only Motorsport Ligier JS2R. And we're already qualifying for the GT3s. Their session is now live. We haven't had any times through yet, but the 992, the TCE and the GTX combined session provided plenty of speaking points, topics of conversation. And before we get meaningful times through from the GT3s, An excellent run from the local crew, Michelin Motorsport. They had to dodge a bit of carnage, though, here and there, including a wayward Vortex at one point. Then there was a high-speed off-track moment for the NM Racing Mercedes right through the gravel. The second session was stopped by the Ginetta of CWS Engineering, stopping on the Kemmel Straight, and then Neil Muston would get back in for Q3 and have another moment leaving Campus Corner when one of the rear wheels came off the car inexplicably. Tremendous lap time from James Kellett, also from Abdullah Al-Khalifi in his QMF by the QMF car from Qatar. This was the spin for Neil Muston, and he was very nearly collected by several cars who headed through the blind right-hander at Campus. I didn't notice that at one point one of the Vortex doors had become unlatched as well. But Michelin Motorsport doing things in style, and as Julian Hans has made the point, they're based just 5 minutes drive or so away from here, so lots of supporters. We go straight into qualifying for GT3 though next. 3 sessions again, and this, if you have an AM in your lineup, must be when the AM goes into the car. And this, as we were making the point earlier on, Simon, is where we might see the most differential between quickest and slowest drivers, because you can have an AM driver, but they might be a very, very quick driver versus someone whose day job is, well, none of their day jobs, generally speaking, is racing. We have full-on pros, as you've mentioned, for Klaus Bachler. But when we get to the pros in the final session of these 3, the differences are minuscule, hundredths of a second, whereas it might be a full second between times in this session. So it can be often won and lost in Q1.
Exactly that, and certainly looking at the drivers that are out or about to come out on track, some of them have already left the pit lane. You have drivers like Alexander Prince, for example, who's been racing in this series. They're part of the Hoffel racing team that won the Barcelona 24 Hours last year. Always very strong. Similarly, Oliver Campos, another extremely strong driver. So that, and Adam Osieka was also super quick. Ayrton Rodan. There's a lot of them that are very quick hands.
Well, there's indeed. We'll run through the drivers in detail in just a tick. Now, we've talked about a crew that are proudly Belgian, who are here this weekend, the Michelin Motorsport gang. A crew that are proudly Slovakian, and in fact they call themselves ARC Bratislava now with Sarah.
Konopka, wonderful to see you here. Very positive weekend for ARC Bratislava out in Mugello last time. How has that left the team spirits?
Oh yeah, Mugello was really lucky after a long time, because a good weekend was also in Abu Dhabi, but we crashed from first position. Mugello was nice, and I hope also this weekend will be okay.
You've got a new livery this weekend, looking pretty. Can you tell us why?
Not new livery, only very livery, because in free practice a little bit Gerhard crashed the car, and we need to change it.
Well, it's looking nice, a positive change, I would say. Let's, how are you enjoying the track here in Spa?
Yeah, it's a fantastic track. It's history, but also a little bit dangerous track, and especially our Rouge is. Also last year, my partner crashed the car in the race after 3 laps. That I hope this year will be better.
Well, I hope for you too. Do you want to say a couple of words for your Slovakian fans in Slovakian?
I hope all. Yes. A lot of people check it and watch for our racing, because we are only one Slovakian team, which running in some international series. That I hope everybody will be satisfied after this weekend.
Do you want to say that in your local language? That's what I was saying.
And what tell in my local language?
In Slovakian.
No, všetko najlepšie a veľa šťastia v tomto preteku.
Thank you so much, Miro. Good luck this weekend. Looking forward to qualifying.
Okay, thank you.
So Gerhard that he talked about there, having a minor moment, is actually the pro, or he's the silver in that otherwise AM crew. So Gerhard Terrassa, the Austrian, the 37-year-old silver racer. Then you've got Miroslav, who we've just heard from, and his son Adam Konopka, and Zdeno Mikulascu makes it a 4-driver lineup. You instantly know that it's the ARC Bratislava Lambo, because they paint it bright yellow, or wrap it these days bright yellow. Here is another car that is perhaps unmistakable. Is that Papaya being a McLaren?
think it is. We're doing well with our colours today.
We just, yeah.
Pie, we got that one in there as well. I like that, yeah. Harry George, young man who's been previously racing in the British GTs, was with Ram Racing before in a GT4 car, and now did GT World Challenge. I believe I briefly caught up with Joff from Optimum Motorsport at Paul Ricard last week? I think it was a week's fly on the test day there when I was out there, and he was saying that they were entering a car this weekend, mainly for Harry and Freddie specifically, but the whole car and the team, to get some really good experience of Spa before the absolutely crucial for them Spa 24 Hours, which obviously is the CrowdStrike Spa 24 Hours, I think, to give it its official title, which is at the end of June. We've got testing next month and then the end of June, and it's going to be a monumental entry, as it always is, one of the biggest, best and most spectacular GT races in the world. Lots of purple sectors coming up quickly, so Rodan and George also looking very quick.
But also already a time deleted for Nicholas Bert in the Come To You Racing Aston Martin Vantage. He's gone over the track limits at turn 19. And the problem with doing that is you not only have one time deleted, the lap you're just about to finish, but also the next lap is deleted as well because of the advantage, the forward momentum that you may gain running wide at 19, down the start-finish straight and on to the next lap. So you get this one and the next one deleted. Very, very costly. Want to try and avoid that where possible, particularly because we've already had 8 minutes of this 15-minute session. So this is going to disappear very quickly as well. But as you say, Harry George in the Optimum Motorsport McLaren 720S setting the pace. He's now quicker than Oliver Campos for E2P Racing. There goes Ayrton Redont for Agit Red Hat Racing, though, in the Mercedes, the big 6.2-litre V8 in the front of that GT3 Evo. And 93, Ayrton Redont in the Pro-Am category for GT3 moves up to second overall.
Yeah, Max Moritz just following him there in the Herberth Racing Porsche. There he's coming down into O'Rourke's very distinctive livery. If you look very close, you'll see that it's not just plain dark green, it's actually a tartan livery in there. Really, really cool. And we mentioned earlier, we were chatting away about pro drivers. Moritz, of course, sharing with Klaus Bachler that we were talking about. He's going to be the pro in that car. Bachler, of course, part of the championship winning team last year in the Creventic Michelin 24H series. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see whether they can maximise that. Had some strong performances already, and Campos purple in sector 1, so he's looking very strong to challenge that fastest time of Harry George. So 2:16.739 from Harry George, Ayrton Redon, Olivier Campos, Adam Osieka, Max Moritz, and Aaron Lim Se-Yoon is our top 6 so far. Nicholas Wellings, who shares Nicholas and Peter Wellings, who share the Haas RT car, really in with a great shout of potentially challenging for a win last time out at Mugello, and unfortunately mechanical issues halted their progress, but very interesting that they were managing to make the 2-driver lineup work as well as it did. Harry George now crosses the line, a little bit slower that time, possibly a bit of traffic. Have we got some more lap times being disallowed? Yeah, car number 2, lap time disallowed. That's Mathieu Castellan in the Haas RT car. Teammate to Wellings that we were talking about there. And Oliver Campos goes to the top of the times, 2:16.212. And that then is just over half a second quicker than Harry George has gone so far.
There's a concern for the Get Speed Mercedes number 28, which has not appeared in the session, and that should have had potentially Ben Pack driving it, and Marvin Klein, who I'm a big fan of, driven Aston Martins in the past and now found his way into Mercedes. Jordan Boisson and Patrick Charlet part of that team, but they are not running. The other side of the Get Speed team, their team PCX Racing. There is one Get Speed Mercedes in the session, and Adam Osieka putting that to good work, being second fastest in 2:86. There is, in fact, the Mercedes heading down the hill now, the only one.
Oh, track right across the curb there. Sorry, Johnny.
Well,
for Osieka.
You know the rule, don't you, within Creventic, as in the curb does count as the track. So even if you've got, it appears all 4 wheels off, might still be okay.
Yeah, and through there, I mean, you could argue that there's, you know, sometimes they look at corners with, you know, yes, you can run wide because there's no real advantage to be gained. Now, we talked about championship winning car. This is the car that we were talking about. This is the team that were champions last year. The Proton competition car, the 73, this weekend being driven by the regular drivers, Jörg Dreisel, Manuel Lauck and Konstantin Dressler, joined by the young Dutchman Robert de Haan, absolute star in Porsche Super Cup as well as GTs, and previously we saw him racing in the British Carrera Cup as well with great success, a real superstar driver. So they're going to be very strong. As we were saying, the mixture of drivers is always fascinating at this stage. Konstantin Dressler is on board the car, as you can see. And see where he ends up. Purple sector in the middle and ends up second quickest. So that car's gone very, very well there. Great lap by him. Harry George just moves up to third. He's just done a 2:16.405. So 2:16.212 for Campos. Going quicker still. Fantastic lap even by the Spaniard.
Dwight Merriman's got a bit more work to do because he's just had a lap deleted in the number 81 era Motorsport Ferrari. That was for track limits, as has 77 Harry George gets his last lap deleted in the Optimum Motorsport McLaren, but it's still going pretty well in that car. But Oliver Campos fastest for the Spanish squad E2P Racing. They moved to the Aston Martin chassis last year, did a full campaign in 2025 in fact. So it's Spain on top from two German outfits. Proton competition with their Porsche and Konstantin Dressler, and Adam Osika, another German, racing for Get Speed Mercedes. As we go with 2 minutes to go to Sarah very quickly.
Hi, Ajith from Ajith Red Ant Racing. Wonderful to see you back here. Incredible time out in Mugello, but here for Spa for hopefully better results.
I wish the same. Thank you so much. Love coming back to Spa. Wonderful circuit. We had a good year last year in the Cup car Creventic series. We finished P2 and things are going well so far. So hope for a good result.
Wonderful track, and I guess your driving is sort of improving. You're around an incredible team as well. Tell us more about the spirit of Ajith Red Ant Racing.
Thank you so much. And in fact, a huge credit, to the team, Ayrton, Yannick, Kobe, Mr. Bert, and his family. Very supportive, and of course, Romain Wozniak, my teammate in the P3, very helpful with me coming to terms with the circuits, getting my lines, and getting me to get better as a driver. So I guess I owe it to them. So seriously, I'm learning so much from them.
And tell us more about the other championships that you're a part of, the other driving you're doing. You told me you have a very exciting birthday coming up.
In fact, we finished the first round of the Michelin Cup round at Mugello. At Barcelona. It was, should I say, baptism by fire. The level of competition is really high, and we had a good race. A lot to learn from that. We're looking forward to the next round at Paul Ricard, which happens to be on the 1st of May, happens to be on the birthday. Yeah, so the Michelin Cup 2026, the Creventic 2026, and hopefully we plan to give our entry for the Asian Le Mans in a P2. So I want to give P2, the LMP2 cars a shot, and hopefully work towards Le Mans. That's where we all want to be, the Le Mans 24. So really, and next year, of course, if we do get an entry, it will be the ELMS in a P2. So, I'm just keeping my fingers crossed. I hope everything works out for us.
Well, it's all moving in the right direction. Eyes back on qualifying now. Ayrton's in the car. We'll be looking out, and we'll see you in the car tomorrow.
Yeah, sure. Because Ayrton, Kobe, and Yannick are doing the quali, and I hope to have a good run tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you in the car tomorrow. Thank you so much, Ajith.
Take care. Bye-bye.
With the checkered flag out at the end of the first session, Oliver Campos fastest for E2P Racing. The Aston Martin Vantage pitted without seeing the checkered flag out on track. Konstantin Dressler ran in reasonably close. There was a 1/10.5 in it in the end between the Aston and the rear-engine Porsche from Proton competition. Dressler's time at 2:16.3 as opposed to the provisional pole time. As things stand, that would be a provisional pole time, but of course we need 2 more times to make it into the average, and that's a 2:16.2. However, Simon Hill frantically pointing at the screen saying, watch this McLaren though, Johnny, we're not finished yet, and Harry George might have a secret weapon up his sleeve.
Yeah, he's gone green in Sector 1, so that's his personal best. He's done a 39.080. but hasn't improved in Sector 2. So let's see if he can have an absolutely monster Sector 3. There is a chance he might move up. At the moment, he needs about just over 1/10 of a second to move up a place and to go ahead of Ayrton Rodin. We obviously just heard from Ajit Kumar, who's, of course, sharing the car with Ayrton. And Harry crosses the line. Let's have a look. 2:16.725. That time, no, so a couple of tenths down. So I didn't manage to improve, but still a very good lap nevertheless.
Well, I've got him in second place now.
Oh,
the 77 car went second.
So there's me pointing frantically at the screen, down at the timing screen. I'm looking at the wrong place. Can't get the staff, can you?
That's
I
all right.
apologise, folks.
So that's a front row all of a sudden. So he's gone from, where was he before?
Yeah.
Fourth. So fourth to second, or maybe fifth to second.
Fifth to second it was, yeah, definitely.
Adamo Seeker isn't yet finished in the 286 Mercedes. As Seeker's times aren't indicative of any meaning. No, he's backed off, hasn't he, Seeker?
I think he's on an in-lap looking at the middle sector time.
Indeed.
He's a good 6 seconds down on his best. So.
Yeah.
But
well,
yeah, great performance. Really impressive stuff by Harry George there. He's going to be chuffed to bits with that. Just over 1/10 of a second off of Olivier Campos. So Oliver Campos, rather. Very impressive stuff.
So there we go. Harry on the wind-down lap. We'll wait to see who they're going to put into the McLaren number 77 at Optimum for a few moments. And that gives us an opportunity to head back to the pit lane.
Ayrton just jumped out the car. I mean, got a little bit of gravel being dug out here. Can you tell us where you were catching it? You were obviously pushing hard.
I was in Speaker's corner, just over pushing a tiny bit. Dipped the wheel in the gravel, nothing major. For the rest, actually, it was quite good. I'm not going to complain about that.
Other than that, how's the car feeling?
No, it was better. This morning it was quite dirty on track. Then we lost some grip compared to the test days before. But now the grip was back like it was before, so should be fine for the weekend.
Are you feeling the track evolution as the weekend goes on? There hasn't been any rain yet. Touch wood.
Yeah, of course there is some track evolution as well with all the championships that are driving here on different tires. The TCRs are driving Kumo, the Radicals are driving Hankook, we are driving Michelin. So all that is not really good for the tracks. But being now after the 992s, which is again Michelin rubber on track, which improves our grip. So.
You were helping Yannick strap into the car then. You've handed over him for Q2. What were you saying to him?
Push and go for it.
Just push and go for it. Nothing else more technical that you're going to let us know about?
No, he already knows what to do.
Thank you so much, Ayrton. And I'll definitely stay away from the garage this weekend. I know it's been a bad omen the past couple of races.
Yeah, if it goes well, then stay away, please.
No worries. Thank you so much, Ayrton.
I think he means that in the best possible taste as well. But, yeah, coming from...
I had an interview with him and he said, yep, it's going great. And the moment I stepped out the garage, that was when Ajit put it off the track and it wasn't going so well. So after that, he said, stay away when it's going well.
It's normally the commentators that get the assignment of the curse, of course, because it just works better. But there is a pit lane reporter curse, I'm sure, as well, that can occasionally sneak in, and everyone here at Spa will be hoping that that is not the case. But we have to talk to these people as well to find out precisely what's going on behind the garage doors. Many, many different stories, as Joe Bradley always hunts them out. So the car's coming back in again to their stabling positions for a new set of tyres. You have to put a new set of tyres on for the next 15-minute segment. And this is where there's a bit more freedom when you are selecting your drivers. Whereas if you have an AM in your lineup, they have to go into qualifying one. Now they can start to surprise the odd rival here and there with who you might be up against in the next 15 minutes.
Exactly that. And if it also, again, you know, as we were saying, with the AMS segment, you've got probably the biggest disparity between, is that the word?
Disparity.
Between the quickest and the least quick. They're all quick drivers, but the very quickest and the least quick. It starts to concertina down a little bit now. You get the drivers in here, many of whom are listed as semi-pros, that in most other forms of GT racing would probably be considered a pro or, you know, in that sort of elite level. So there's at least half of the cars on the grid here that the drivers in this one are going to be potentially even setting the fastest lap of the session for that car. It could happen because there's such a little difference between the the pros and the semi-pros in this. So to answer your question about the McLaren, Freddie Tomlinson on board, and Torsten Kratz on board the Hofer racing car. Manuela Gosner in the MP racing car, they've a family affair. Adam Konopka, Tom Coronel. Now there's a name that we love to hear. Tom Coronel is racing with us in the Come To You Aston Martin. Expect him to be super fast. Antonio Saniero in the E2P car. Andres Latour in the Pelin racing car. Good to see them back. They did quite a lot of the races here in this championship last year. This is, you know, they were actually, I'm surprised they weren't in Mugello. I don't know if there was a clash of events that they were maybe running something else at the same time.
Yeah, maybe.
And Jake Hill on board the 81 era motorsport car.
Indeed so. Someone who you know quite well. It's your son.
His mum's lovely.
His mum's lovely. Nice line. You've been preparing that one for a while. Okay, so Antonio Sainero in the E2P Racing Aston Martin. His teammate has been quickest so far. That was an Oliver Campos, and Sainero is the pro in the 90 car. So there is a chance that the Aston Martin will just keep on getting quicker now that they put Antonio into that car. A crew that will be hoping that that's not the case is Optimum Motorsport, with Freddie Tomlinson driving that. That means they're saving Salman Ovega until the final session of the three. Manuel Lauch into the Porsche, and Manuel Lauch suggests rather that Robert de Haan will be held back for the final qualifying session in the Proton Porsche. Therefore, there's a little bit of guesswork on my part in that respect. And the perhaps most numerous manufacturer, as in Mercedes, unfortunately one is not appearing in the session, so there's clearly an issue with car 28, the other Get Speed car. I'm trying to do a little bit of digging to find out precisely why that Get Speed Mercedes number 28 hasn't featured yet, but it is in the Pro-Am lineup. And meanwhile, concentrating on the Spanish Aston Martin heading into Pouhon, Simon.
Yeah, and that car has been very, very quick. Obviously, always great to see multiple manufacturers represented in this series. 18 cars should be starting tomorrow, as Johnny's just mentioned. One of them, one of the Mercs has not got out for this session. That's one of the really strong cars as well. Last time out, we saw Mauro Engel on board that car, and this weekend it has the other drivers, Jordan Boisson, Benjamin Pack. Are the sort of regular guys in that car, and this time Marvin Klein that you mentioned is a man, I think, was factory driver at McLaren. Am I remembering that right? No, that's Marvin Kirchhoff.
It could be right, yeah. Yes,
could be. I don't know. So Qualink's quickest at the moment through the first sector.
I know he used to race when DTM was still sort of DTM before it became GT3. There were some Astons that they put into that championship, the German Touring Car Championship, and Marvin used to drive one of those 4 Astons in the latter portion of DTM. I'm hearing that the 28 car had actually a drama in free practice, which it just stopped out on track. So they've clearly not been
maybe an engine or gearbox, and we'll find out. We'll have the news for you tomorrow, folks, when we start the first part, Saturday's part of the race, as it were.
But fingers crossed that their weekend is not over, and they may now have to seek special dispensation to actually start tomorrow's race, having not done any of the qualifying. Assuming they don't do any of the qualifying, they could pop out in Q3, I suppose, and then therefore would be eligible to be put at the back of the grid. Already had 5 minutes, though, of this session, and quickest in it so far. We've only had one meaningful time, and that is Peter Gulinks in the Haas RT Audi, the R8 LMS. ARC Bratislava's Lamborghini goes second fastest within this session for Adam Konopka, and Torsten Kratz with a very good time for Hofer Racing. These are generally, well, the Hofer time from Torsten Kratz quicker than generally times we had in Q1. And now into the 2:15s.
And Sanero, fantastic lap by him, 3 purple sectors. First time we've seen a car in the 15s to date, so superb lap by him. Yeah, absolutely brilliant lap from the Aston. So clearly the car's working extremely well.
As I said, I think of the 3 Aston Martin drivers that can be utilised in qualifying, Antonio's generally the quickest on paper. Pablo Buguera will have to do the 3rd session, but he is an AM driver, so generally on the balance of play, wouldn't be as quick as Antonio Sainero. In this session, going second fastest now is Gregory Servet for Come To You Racing. So that's now an Aston Martin Vantage 1-2 when you isolate this session. But still, Freddie Tomlinson in the McLaren is second fastest. And on the average times, there's a second between this car, the Aston Martin, and the McLaren that Freddie drives. Let's get a quick update from Sarah downstairs.
I'm with Lisa Clark from Pelin Racing. I'm like getting confused. Some teams are racing, some are Motorsport. Pelin Racing. Wonderful to see you back here. You were here last year racing in Spa with the Creventic series. How are you finding it out on the circuit this weekend?
It's been a challenging one for us as a team. We haven't gotten to get many laps in at all. And we had some power steering issues today and electrical, so none of us got to practice. But we jumped in quali. We'll be starting back of the bus, I'm sure, with no practice. But anyway, this place is an epic track, and I'm always feel very grateful to be racing here at this circuit.
There's still a lot of qualifying to go, so even though you might be towards the back, can you talk about the difference in mindset when you are at the back?
I think for me, you don't want to take big risks, but you realize you've got to pick up some spots. And it is a long race, so 12 hours, a lot can change quickly. So you got to keep that in mind with yourself so you don't over-push yourself too aggressively.
And also it's split into two. So what's the plan going into tomorrow?
Into tomorrow? No plan yet. We've got to get through today. See that checker later today, then we'll be happy, yes.
Well, it's a two-part race, so a lot of the first half of the race is getting into Sunday as well.
I think quali for us is a big step because of the car. We had some problems too, so we're counting positives on there. And then for tomorrow, the plan is just we're going to still work on once we see how we come up in quali, and from there we'll just kind of figure out strategy for each driver and drive time and all of that.
And just really quickly on the problems with the car, can you tell us what they are and if you're going to be able to have them, ready for tomorrow?
Yeah, I think they're so far, because I just did my quali session and the car worked. So second driver went out, Andre. So far so good for him. So I think we're in the clear. So tomorrow we can push and play with everybody else.
Well, hopefully it makes it through the rest of qualifying.
Yes, fingers crossed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, that's the thing. It's about at least just getting to the end of the sessions with the car still intact, and then you can start to look forward and tackle the race. And it'll be a lot about just getting to the end of portion one. No trophies or points on offer when we get to the end of Saturday. That is just an overnight leader. The cars are parked in Parc Fermé, and then we get underway for Sunday's portion.
Just sorry, my exhaling there was a big wobble for Freddie Tomlinson going through Eau Rouge. That would have completely focused his attention going through there. So at the moment in this particular session that we're looking at, quickest overall with a 2:15.661 is Freddie Tomlinson that we were just talking about, just slightly ahead of Jake Hill, 2:15.802. Oh, sorry, I've missed one there, and I think Tom Collins just gone a little bit quicker overall in the session, 2:15.577, then Tomlinson, then Hill, and then next up on a 2:16.831 is lost myself there, Dominic Ang. So yeah, looking really interesting mixture of manufacturers there. So Aston Martin looking very, very strong here. McLaren, Ferrari are up there as well. So going to be really interesting to see how we improve. A lot of green sectors going on here. Just about everybody has gone green in the sector one. So going to be really interesting to see how that pays out in the rest of the lap.
So Pelin Racing battling an electrical problem related to the ABS potentially, and Andres Latour now driving that car, which Lisa Clark mentioned. So handing over to the Aussie. They've got Jeff Westphal and Kyle Marcelli as part of that driver lineup as well. But I've now sent Sarah on a bit of a mission to find out precisely what's wrong with the Get Speed Mercedes number 28, as to why we haven't seen that at all, and whether they are attempting to fix the car in time for tomorrow's race. Bit harum-scarum coming into Le Com corner for 286, the Porsche on the ragged edge. That's Luxembourgish driver Steve Jantz, who is now fourth in this session. but way up the curb, I think still just about within the track limits. It was difficult to tell from that angle, and the car is third fastest, so he's fourth fastest in Q2, but collectively they're up to third quickest. Antonio Sainero now in the pits though, so still with 3 minutes to go. They're at Aston and E2P Racing saying, we've worked these tyres enough, we want them to be usable for the race at the weekend, so let's get him in.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, there is a lot. You know, you heard the comment from Lisa Clark, which was very pertinent, which is like, let's focus on tomorrow. As you can see, some sort of an off, it looks like the ARC Bratislava car has had. And I don't know if it's much damage there, or if that's just. Oh, here we go. Look at the replay. It ends up big wobble, and does he slap the tyres? Yes, he does. He just bounces off the tyre. Oh, that is a very near miss. That is incredibly near miss. So I would suggest that they're going to park that car up and have a good look across the car, make sure that Konopka hasn't done anything significantly to damage the car. So, yeah, going to be difficult to see whether that car will get back out or not. Hopefully they can for their sake. So with just over 2 minutes, or exactly 2 minutes now remaining, those drivers that are on a lap will, depending on obviously where they are on the lap, if they've just started their lap, this will be their final lap. So this car here, the 269 of Robert Renauer, been regular in this series, as it looks like they're pushing the Lamborghini, the RC Lamborghini. Oh, that was very close as the Haas RT car came in. They started to manoeuvre the Lambo backwards and forwards to push it into the pit lane, and almost manoeuvred into each other there. So, yes, they're going to be a difficult one to see if they can get that car back out again or not.
I think I might have misidentified the two three-digit numbered cars in GT3 because Alfred Renauer was the wayward guy. I for some reason got Steve Yance in my head and figured that he was driving a Porsche, but he is not. It's a Mercedes, and that's the other Get Speed car, which is fine. And actually, speaking of Get Speed cars, let's go back to Sarah, because I sent you on a mission to try and find out what the issue is with car 28. Any news?
Yes, it's not in the garage, it's actually in the paddock. It's got some technical issues that were picked up this morning, or they discovered this morning. It's not going to take part in qualifying, but they will be back out for the race tomorrow.
They will be in the race tomorrow.
Which is a shame, because they were pole in Mugello.
That is their hope, but they will have to go sort of cap in hand to the race director and say, please can we start? Because the regulations say if you've not qualified the car in any of the sessions, you're not automatically eligible to start the race. That's the whole point of qualifying for a race. Normally it's fine and they'll do some checking, but yeah, there's still certain red tape that you need to encounter and get through before you're on the grid.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Going to be interesting to see whether they can get the car back out, or get the car out rather for tomorrow. It depends on what's happened as well. Obviously, if it was something like if they did have a problem like some sort of chassis damage that they've discovered, then that could actually put the car out for the weekend. So, whilst we're assuming that whatever it is that's kept it out is a fixable, technical issue, it may not be. It may be a bit more severe than that. So hopefully, for their sake, they can A, get it fixed, and B, get dispensation to be able to run. I would suggest probably the other teams need to, agree to that. I think that's probably one of the first things. That's usually what happens when somebody has had a situation like this, is that the rest of the teams kind of say yes or no. If you're going to be selfish about it, you could say, well, it's one of the most competitive cars on the grid, so maybe we prefer it not to be on the grid if you're the other teams. But
True.
If you're the organisers and the championship, we want to keep as many cars on the grid as possible, and the fans, of course. And I know there's an awful lot of people that will be watching with great interest to see happens. But now we're really just seeing some time starting to jump down. 2:15, 2:11, the quickest in the session from Sanero. And then we've got quite a few cars in the 2:15s. Next up, I think, was Coronel with the 2:15.5. Tomlinson 2:15.6, and then the other Get Speed Merc, which should be Steve Jans at a 2:15.722. And then I think Jake, I think, was next up with a 2:15.802. So very competitive stuff, and also highlights just how strong the Astons seem to be here this weekend already, just looking at the times they're doing.
Well, yes, occupying first and well, for a time, second position, but the Come2U car now has dropped down to 8th position for Gregory Servet. But its times within that session, certainly Tom Coronel doing nicely in the sister car, and Sainero that confident within E2P Racing that he parked the car with still 4 minutes or so of the session remaining to try and preserve the tyre life. And also into the pits then comes Tom Coronel, second quickest in that session, down in 11th, though, as I say, collectively on the average time. So still Optimum Motorsport are occupying a front row start, potentially. Still one more session to come, don't forget, which will start at 1:05 local time. Steve Yantz for Get Speed Team JR286 driving a Mercedes. 286 number as well for that third place car, and Alfred Renau was pushing very, very hard within qualifying 2. Alfred actually finished third fastest in the session, quicker than Freddie Tomlinson and quicker than Steve Yantz, with then Jake Hill 6th fastest in the number 81 Ferrari. So ERA have managed to get to 14th spot, but that was because in the 81 Ferrari, there was a little bit of a difficulty with Dwight Merriman keeping a legal lap, and he needed a few attempts at that. I think he could have been quicker had his lines been a bit tidier. So again, Ferrari may be in a bit of a false position down there in 14th spot. There are 2 Ferraris in the entry. The other one's suffering with electrical problems and is further down in 17th position. That's another aspect of qualifying being one thing, but if you're battling either track limits or also the car not quite being right, it sets up a grid, but there's no saying that the cars at the front of the grid are going to be quickest in a 12-hour race.
And there are definitely certain cars that seem to be consistently very, very strong in qualifying, and it tends to average itself out a little bit more in the race. It then becomes the actual performance of the cars tend to be relatively equal. It then comes down to strategy, and it comes down to a little bit of good fortune sometimes with things like code 60s and when you make your pit stop, on top of which it also, depends on which drivers are in at which time. So, for example, there's been situations in the past where you've got an AM driver who is significantly slower than the other drivers in the car, and there's a minimum amount of drive time that the AM drivers have to do. And if it so happens that the AM driver's in the car when there's code 60s on, you lose less time as a result, because obviously everyone's travelling around at 60 Ks. It's not like a safety car where you can gain or lose in that situation. If you look at other forms of sports car racing, IMSA being an obvious one where they use safety cars all the time.
Yes.
Daytona inevitably seems to be at least a 2, maybe 3 car battle on the very last lap, and that's partly because of that. You have people that have been able to make up time after incidents or problems, and with good strategy and quick drivers, as to be honest, most of them are there. But yeah, so I wouldn't be at all surprised, just mentioning there, for example, the Ferraris, that both the Ferraris will be stronger in the race than they have perhaps been in qualifying. Both those cars, going back to my point, have what you and I would call a true amateur driver in there, in Dwight Merriman and Lisa Clark. They're both drivers who are relatively new to the sport and have been developing it. Although Dwight, it seems to sometimes forget, has actually been part of the winning team for Era Motorsport at the Daytona 24 Hours in the LMP2 class.
True.
Race,
Yeah.
21 and 2024, and was an Asian Le Mans champion as well. So, Dwight's perhaps certainly compared to, say, Lisa, who's a bit less experienced, but both of them, really passionate about their racing, and it's great to see them bringing those teams together and getting everybody on the grid as we go into the final and decisive part of qualifying for the Michelin 24-hour series here at SPA-FRANCORCHAMPS.
And it is, as predicted, Pablo Buguera, who is E2P Racing Aston Martin, which is quickest so far. It had to be Pablo because there were no other drivers, just entering with the 3, as they often do. But Pablo won't be as quick, I'm going to suggest, as Antonio Sainero, because Pablo Buguera is another AM driver, like his teammate Oliver Campos. So is that the chance for everybody else who may be plugging absolute pros in for this final session to close that gap, which only sits at 0.3 of a second on the average times? So the Aston's collective effort is a 2:15.7. Then you've got the 2:16.0 from the Optimum Motorsport McLaren, A 2:16.1 from the Get Speed team, JR2886 Mercedes, and the Herbert Motorsport Porsche is fourth fastest so far, also in the low 2:16s. It's a 2:16.2, as is actually the Adjet Red Hat Racing Mercedes, also in the 2:16.2. So that's incredibly tight on the average times. 2:16.0, 2:16.1, then two cars in the 2:16.2s, 2:16.3 for the Proton competition Porsche, which now has Manuel Lauch at the wheel as well. I still think the pole position could come from any one of about 6 cars yet.
Couldn't agree more. And again, as you said, if you look at it, got Aston Martin, McLaren, Mercedes, Porsche, 4 different brands that are in there that have got a realistic shot at it. It would appear that the Mercedes and the Astons are the strongest on the single lap. We've seen Mercedes on pole at the Dubai 24 Hours with Ben Pack, and also last time out in Mugello with the Get Speed team. Partly because obviously certainly in Dubai they obviously had such a strong driver lineup with Mauro Engel. In fact, both races Mauro Engel on board the car. So not a real surprise with Mr. Mercedes-Benz driving the car. The man who I believe, if I've heard correctly, that he was one of the development drivers in that car. So not only
AMG,
has he raced them since they very first came into the GT3 world, but he was very much part of understanding it and developing it. Him, Jules Gounon are the 2 guys that spring to mind as the absolute superstars of that manufacturer. As we see another Mercedes, a car that's been, the Hoffa Racing team have been very much part of this series for some time now. As we said earlier, they won the day. They didn't win the Daytona 24 Hours. Let's start again. They won the Barcelona 24 Hours. I don't think they won the Daytona 24 Hours. I missed that one. I did.
Yeah, so did I.
Yeah, you were there.
But now you're going to ask me who did win the Daytona 24 Hours in GT. I can't remember. My mindset is entirely within the 24H series for this weekend.
I know.
I didn't cover that race this year either, so that's my saving grace.
I know the previous year, 25, the GTD, which is the... Hang on, the GTD is the semi-pro category, isn't it? Was AWA Racing with Matt Bell on board in the Corvette.
Very good.
I know the guys, Andrew at AWA, as my company I work with, Bespoke Handling. We've just flown their car over to TF Sport. We're going to run the car at the Mans this year. So they're a great bunch of people. Really enjoy working with them, and quite a few people on the grid that we do some bits and pieces for. So as well as them, Optimum we've done some work for in the past as well.
Tim up in London has beaten me to it, but I was on the right page. It was a Mercedes, but it was Winward Racing for Luki Auer, Indy Doncher, Philip Ellis and Russell Ward.
There you go.
After 661 laps. So GTD, and then you got GTD Pro, which was a win for a BMW, Paul Miller Racing. Anyway, this is the session we're interested in right now, rather than a race 3 months ago.
So Simon Balkan, Belgian driver, a circuit expert, no doubt. That's a bit of an assumption, really. Just because he's Belgian, he mustn't be really out Spa, but I'm just going to take a wild stab in the gut. We'll have to find out. Again, another job for Sarah and maybe Carla tomorrow to get a little bit more in depth on that. So what we're looking to see is a 2:15.2 is the quickest lap we've seen so far today, which was the Spanish car, wasn't it? A 2:15.211.
Yes.
And a have I read that properly? Oh no, sorry. I'm complete. My old eyes are not working very well there. 2:15.396 now, very quick in this session. That is the Ferrari of Jeff Westphal. So that's a really good lap by Jeff.
Jeff Westphal, for a number of seasons, drove the Glickenhaus at the Nürburgring 24 Hours for Jim's team. And the 29 car is no stranger to having Jeff in that car, though, as well. So he's a mean GT3 runner in 296 material in more recent years. Simon Balkan, a name that you've mentioned, is up there in this session as well, 2:17. So that's still about 2.5 seconds off. But are we at a point? Yeah, we're still not quite as quick as the previous session, which was the Antonio Sainero time in the E2P Racing Aston Martin. So they're all looking to try and match, and if not beat, a 2 minutes 15.2. And Jeff Westphal's time in the Pelin Racing Ferrari, okay, it might have electrical / ABS problems, but Jeff is hustling it on and getting it, what, up to 8th initially, but now as the quicker times start to come through, he's dropped it down to 10th place. Still quickest in this session, but
Ryan DL just put in a very good lap in the other Ferrari, the European
yes.
car, 2:16.135. Just slightly at this stage, only his second flying lap. He's about 3/10 off of what the car did in the last session.
Kobe de Bruyke is worth a mention because in the Adjit Red Ant Racing Mercedes, 2:15.406 to go second fastest in qualifying 3.
Now we've got a 2:15.0, almost into the 14s.
That really is faster than we've had previously in the 2 sessions so far. So a flat 2:15, mightily impressive from Nicolas Bert in the Come To You Racing Aston Martin. That will bring the Aston up to 4th position, therefore. So we have an Aston actually no longer on pole, because the other guy we need to be looking out for is Robert de Haan in his Proton Competition Porsche, and Patrick Liddy, who really did impress me at Mugello in the Get Speed Team JR286 Mercedes, because on their average time, they are now toying with pole position. Yes, they might have a GT3 AM lineup, but they are 0.2 of a second clear of Proton Competition's Porsche and Robert de Haan's time, as now Klaus Bachler joins the party in his Herbert Motorsport Porsche, and the Austrian's just done a 2:15.133. The average is therefore down to a 2:15.8 to bring car 269 to second fastest. This is what I was talking about. This is what I was really looking forward to. Lots of times in the 2:15s.
Sorry to interrupt. Salman Ovega in the Porsche, in the McLaren that we see on screen there, just set in a very, very fast purple, very fast middle sector, purple in sector 2. So going to be interesting to see if that moves the car up. Won't take a huge amount, I think, and it could potentially move up into the top 3 if this lap is completed as well as the first part of the lap has gone. Comes out of the last corner. Let's watch to see what he does as he crosses the line. Yes, he goes to the top of the times with a brilliant, he's the first driver we've seen in the 2:14s, 2:14.593, and that takes the average down to a 2:15.534. What a great lap.
Superb from Salman, who has been impressive in recent years in the Ford Mustangs around the Nürburgring, NLS races, and also the 24 hours as well, but totally switching the dynamics of the car that he drives this weekend, sticking the engine in the middle for the McLaren, and the Optima Motorsport quicker. Robert de Haan goes through and also improves. He's 3rd fastest for Proton Competition, but up to 2nd within this session.
Indeed, and the other car that's interesting is the car that we saw had slapped the wall out on the circuit in the previous session, the ARC Bratislava Lamborghini, back out and going fastest in sector 1 at the moment with the Austrian driver Gerard Teresa on board.
So Teresa, who had a little bit of a moment in the ARC Bratislava Lamborghini, as described by Miro Konotka, will be making sure things are neat and tidy in this final qualifying session of 6 that we've brought to you live here on the 24H Series Creventic YouTube channel and on the RSL Radio Show Limited network, of course. 2:14.593 is Salman Ovega's effort. He is still purple with that lap time, so that was further improvement, was it not, for the German? Yeah, last time around going purple again. 2:14.8 for Robert de Haan, 2nd in the session, 4th on the averages. Klaus Bachler looking to lift the Herbert Motorsport Porsche into the top 2 positions. That car is 3rd fastest so far, but Klaus is 3rd fastest in the session, looking to try and find about a 10th to elevate the Herbert car yet further. So the top positions on the averages: McLaren quickest, Mercedes 2nd fastest for Get Speed, thanks to Patrick Liddy's effort, and then 2 Porsches, 1 from Herbert Motorsport, 1 from Proton Competition. And can Salman Ovega go even faster on this lap? Just looking at his sectors, he's not green through any of them. Robert de Haan is, though, so again he's finding a bit more time through that short first sector of the lap.
it's pretty impressive stuff, isn't it? Especially seeing Dahan, you know, we've not seen him in this category, or this championship rather, before. So adapted incredibly quickly, and he's absolutely flying. When you look at how the car is working, he's really got on top of that car so quickly. And it's such a good team that he's running with. Proton, as we know, at all levels that they race in, is, you know, there's 3 or 4 Porsche teams. There's probably the best known as Manthey, there's Proton, there's Herberth, and people like Lion Speed as well. There's some incredibly strong teams that are working with the Porsche factory in providing the car. Liddy looking strong as well, but I've got a purple Sector 1. The the Aston there looking resplendent in that very distinctive British racing green and yellow. Love that livery. Just works so well, doesn't it? We've talked a lot about colours today.
Yeah, but I mean, that's how people associate with their favourites a lot of the time. The livery on each of the cars. Nicholas Baert for Come To You Racing. I did think that lap might have turned into something more impressive, but he lost a couple of seconds in the final sector. Could that have been a bit of stray traffic here and there? Because some are on what's called a push lap, others are just trying to buy themselves a bit of room to mean that they can go again on the next lap. And if they've tripped over 1 or 2 cars not going at full speed, that is where you can lose a tenth and a bit more. Green times from the middle order, though, as Ryan Diel goes down into the 2:15s now. I say middle order, that's purely on the averages. Where does that put Ryan quickest in the session so far, I reckon? Oh, no, sorry, that was a lap around.
Yeah,
yes.
It was, but not overall. It's the full.
No, you're right.
14.5, is it, I think, is the quickest.
What I'm doing is reordering the wrong column.
At the moment, so that's working pretty well. But you know, one of the things that we're looking at here is you can really see where, as you go into the sessions, the fuel load is obviously lightening, and because you've got a combination of extremely fast drivers and the car's in their optimum position, if you pardon the pun, as the optimum car comes in the sense that they've got brand new tyres at the start of the session, they've got exceptionally fast racing drivers in the car, and they've got the least amount of fuel that they'll have run in qualifier.
Yeah.
So whilst it's impressive, it's not totally surprising that they're, you know, you think we were seeing, what was it, 15.2 I think was the quickest in the previous session, and we're now 14.5, so that just over half a second is a combination of all of those factors that would potentially bring that time down. So
yeah, very good point to make. Yeah, all is not remaining the same. Fresher tyres, lighter car. Ideal scenario for Salman Ovega, I suppose you could argue, who has already headed into pit lane to begin the celebrations, perhaps, at Optimum Motorsport.
Sorry, John. Less than a minute to go, and also, you know, your point you made earlier was absolutely valid. That, you know, they've probably gone, okay, that's it. We've taken enough out of this set of tyres. Just the extra lap might be just to, you know, hurt it a little bit more. And obviously, you know, sometimes you could argue, is it worth risking the car? You know, because if you're pushing that hard to get pole, when you've got a 12-hour race coming up over the next day and a half, day 2 if you want.
Well, on the balance of performance, I really can't work out which is the strongest car to have around Spa, because you've got a mid-engine McLaren, which is potentially going to be finishing these sessions quicker than the front-engine Mercedes, then 2 rear-engine Porsches, then again a Mercedes AMG, the 3 front-engine Aston Martins, who have all found one another now on the averages. The best of them being the 41 car of Nicholas Baert for Come To You. The sister car is in behind 7th fastest and 8th quickest for Pablo Buguera. And unfortunately, again, as I suggested, because Buguera is the bronze, that Spanish Aston Martin was always going to drop down the order, but it's ended up 8th, whereas it was about to grab some more significant headlines after 2 of the 3 sessions. But again, they are entered into GT3 AM, so their priority is to win that sub-category, and it's looking like they will start as the 3rd fastest GT3 AM car.
So what that will give the team, when you look at the 3 different categories for the GT3 class, you have GT3 Pro Am and GT3 AM, is that each subsequent category, so Pro Am from Pro, if you like, and then Am from Pro Am, they have things like potentially a little bit more power, they've like less restrictor, air restrictor. They maybe have a slightly faster fuel flow rate, so when they stop for fuel, and get more fuel in a quicker period of time. The amount of fuel sometimes they're allowed to take is slightly higher, because none of these cars or none of the cars in this race will take the maximum amount of fuel that the car would hold, and they're all limited to anywhere between, I think, 95 and about 115 litres. Does that sound about right? Maybe 110, I don't know, without checking the regs carefully. But most importantly, when I saw Sean Goff from Optimum Motorsport, he said we're going to go here and get some important data for our car and for our drivers. And my goodness, have they done that in qualifying. What a brilliant performance by all three drivers, and impressive stuff from Optimum Motorsport, and great to see a McLaren come into the series and showing us what they're all about. Fabulous stuff.
You've got to get the driver makeup just right, and they have limited themselves to a 3-driver lineup as well, which some teams say is just about perfect, particularly because it's a split race. Yes, we're doing 12 hours in total, but we're doing 5.5 hours tomorrow and 6.5 hours on Sunday morning/afternoon, finishing by about 5:30 or so, and therefore the work for 3 drivers is not too excessive. Some brave teams, as I've mentioned already, that are going with 2-driver lineups, and again, you're capable of doing that, but I'm sure they will be feeling it by the end of 2 days of relentless action. 3's probably about right, and a lot of the GT3 quick teams have chosen to go that route. Patrick Liddy in the 286 Get Speed Mercedes. That car actually does have 3 drivers. They used Adam Osika, Steve Yance and Patrick Liddy. So Tanner Harvey was sitting on the sidelines. He's an AM Plus driver. So again, the unknown entity, if you like, in the fastest Mercedes. And then the 2 Porsches in behind. Car 269 for Herbert Motorsport. Max Moritz, who was utilised in the first session for qualifying. Alfred Renauer on the ragged edge, as I noticed, particularly up at Le Com, and Klaus Bachler, who hustled that car to 3rd position on the average times. So they will be the highest placed of the GT3 Pro-Am crews, with Proton Competition, their nearest rivals in Pro-Am, right alongside them for the start of the race tomorrow.
Yeah, impressive stuff, and really great for these guys at Optimum. Standing up on the left of the photo shoot, as you look at the tall chap, is Jamie Wall, former British touring car driver and very, very talented guy. The chap there in the middle with the beard is Sean Goff, team owner, team principal of Optimum. So some very experienced and very strong folks as we're trying to stick the Michelin badge and the badges that the drivers have to run as part of the championship. And there are some teams that where they're running in multiple championships, they have certain spaces on their suits with a bit of Velcro, so you can just change the badges rather than having to have a different suit for every race series. There's our Sarah is down there, and he's going to catch up with our pole position drivers.
Well, congratulations on pole. Incredible stint for all of you. Tell us what it was feeling like out there. Did you feel like you'd had it?
Yeah, I mean, it's my first weekend in the McLaren, and yeah, I'm delighted. The car feels really good and really fast, and I didn't know I was that fast, but it felt quite fast, yeah.
Well, looking forward to tomorrow. Coming off the start, it is a 12-hour race, 5.5 hours tomorrow. What are you going to be looking to do into turn 1? Who's going to be getting in the car first?
We'll have a discussion about that later to find out who's going to start the race. But yeah, just got to try and build on a good qualifying performance and just get as big of an advantage over everyone as we can.
Well, it's been pretty dry so far, but there is a little bit of rain forecast. Did you manage to get in the car and put some laps in during I think there was a bit of water on the track during practice earlier in the week?
Well, I got the call yesterday afternoon, so I certainly didn't. Yeah, I've only done 8 laps this morning before qualifying. Car was mega. Yeah, if it rains, it's the same for everyone else, so, bring it on.
Well, not bad getting a last-minute call and then in a car and putting it on pole. Well, congratulations to all of you. Looking forward to seeing you out there tomorrow. I guess you've got lots to talk about overnight, and we'll see you back here tomorrow morning.
An excellent collective effort then from Optimum Motorsport. Harry George, Freddie Tomlinson, Salman Ovega in that order. And they combined to produce a 2:15.5 44-second lap, 2 minutes and 15.5 to give them pole position by a couple of tenths. Get Speed Team JR286 Mercedes, second fastest with Patrick Liddy, an excellent time. What did he do in that session? A 2:15.125, so 2:15.7 for the Mercedes, and then an all Porsche second row with Herbert Motorsport and Proton Competition, Klaus Bachler and Robert De Haan doing the most latest times within that 3-session segment. Kobe de Bruyke for Agit Red Ant Racing for Mercedes AMG. He was pretty quick as well in number 93. He's really their secret weapon, along with the 2 Red Ants, of course. Then you have in 6th position Come To You Racing, followed swiftly by the sister car within that Aston Martin team. 3 Vantages together on the grid, in actual fact. 6th, 7th and 8th places. 9th position for Haas RT's Audi, in fact 9th and 10th for the Haas RT R8 LMSs. Stephen Palette was in the number 2 car late on. Ryan Dalziel did his level best to get the Era Motorsport Ferrari into the top 10, but just missed out in the number 81 car. Then ARC Bratislava's Lamborghini Huracan for Gerhard Terrassa, the semi-pro in that driver lineup, number 44. Ahead of Hoffa Racing's Mercedes for Michael Kroll. Continental Racing by Simpson Motorsports Audi, number 69, 14th quickest, ahead of Viper-Nizza Racing's Mercedes. MP Racing's Merc there in 16th, and Pellin Racing battling electrical problems for much of their sessions, but Jeff Westphal did very nicely. We didn't see the 28 car at all, and fingers crossed that that Get Speed car can be fixed overnight in time for the race. Beautiful day here at Spa. Qualifying has passed by very swiftly indeed, and if you're just joining us now, where have you been? This is what you missed. Well, it did take a little bit of time for the really quick times to come through. That's the nature of exclusively reserving qualifying 1 for the AM drivers, but as we've said, most differential within qualifying 1, and that can pivot all on Q1 to determine where you finish on the grid for the main race this weekend. The ARC Bratislava car having a moment in the gravel, coming out of Lufania corner, doing a fair bit of wheel arch damage there. It's amazing what those stones can do at speed. Then the Mercedes started to come into their own, but of course the Aston Martin was looking strong from E2P Racing as well. After 2 drivers, they were fastest, Oliver Campos and Antonio Sainero, but then eventually that final qualifying session promoted Salman Vega, together with his teammates at Optimum Motorsport and the McLaren, to pole position. To look forward to tomorrow, day 2 of our race meeting here at Spa-Francorchamps. We have the 2nd Radical Cup Europe race, which begins at 9:40 Central European summertime, and then the first part of the big race this weekend, 5.5 hours to get through. Simon.
Looking forward to it greatly. As always, there is a question mark about weather at Spa-Francorchamps. We couldn't come to Spa and not talk about the weather. We've spoken about colours a lot today, but the weather not so much, because it's been nice and sunny, and there's been a yellow thing in the sky, which we love seeing. And
a nice blue around it.
And wonderful, yeah. So really looking forward to it. I mean, you look at that qualifying, and it is literally anyone's race. There's probably a dozen cars on the grid that could win outright. There's the same in the 992 class. And, you know, we're going to see, I have absolutely no doubt, 2 brilliant parts of the race tomorrow and on Sunday, and I really can't wait to see everyone get racing.
With thanks to Sarah Esser in the pit lane and on the grid, to Simon Hill alongside me. We'll be joined by Carlo Velti tomorrow as well. From Johnny Palmer, get a good night's sleep tonight. You're going to need the energy for 12 hours of motor racing here at Spa-Francorchamps, round 2 of the European season of the 24H series. Bye-bye.